Welcome to Chinese Novel Audiobook. Chapter 61. Explain the plot. The reason why the compensation is set high is for the subsequent plot. The protagonist target is not a baron. At present, these people are the protagonist's competitors. But in the future, the most lacking thing in the northern province is people. A person who can rise in the northern province is the biggest resource for the protagonist. How to conquer is the most important thing. As for the other party, it doesn't matter if he is also a lord. The protagonist's father is under the command of other lords. There are noble lords under the command of other lords. Why can't the protagonist have one? From my setting, it can be seen that Marquis Lehman does not care about things and does not want to care about things. Then there is a power vacuum in the northern province. Who is left for this? In addition, the protagonist wins the ransom. Of course the protagonist has the final say. How can the other party agree? Then who won? In addition, the moral high ground. Where is the moral high ground? I have said many times that there is no order in the northern province, and strength is king. Chapter 62. Before the storm. Oper began to act. Everything was very beautiful in his imagination. However, he did not know that such an approach was simply stupid. The Habsburg Chamber of Commerce could indeed hire a great knight for protection, but that was only protection and only hiring. This was not a great knight that they owned. There was a big difference in essence. Once the Lawrence territory lost the great knight, the consequences were almost doomed. This was different from the pioneer lord. As long as the pioneer lord did not have a lot of wealth and resources, there would be no big problems. However, the baronial territory had a lot of territory and resources. Without the great knight and a lot of knight power, these resources and territories could not be defended even with the hired great knight. Of course, Oper did not know these for the time being. He was completely immersed in the excitement of taking over the territory. This was the territory. It belonged to him. He had almost given up hope. But he did not expect that he would be favored by the goddess of life at this time. An unexpected pioneering war. His father and elder brother could not return. And he had a chance. Facing this opportunity, he could hardly hold back his excitement, and even wanted to send some gold coins to the Eagle Territory Lord. Of course, this was just an idea. On the surface, he pretended to be angry and sad. He quickly began to take control of the entire Lawrence territory. Fortunately, his father took away a large number of knights, so it was not difficult for him to take control. After taking control of the territory, he immediately took several knights and a large amount of gold coins to head towards Lawrence City. Although he was a little stupid, he also knew that the territory was extremely weak now. Once the news leaked, the entire territory would inevitably be destroyed. After taking control of the territory, he naturally needed to gain a lot of power in a short period of time. As for his method, as he said before, he went to Lawrence to hire at the Habsburg Chamber of Commerce. 3 days later, his figure quickly arrived in Lawrence City. Without any hesitation, Oper spent 2,000 gold coins to hire a great knight and 10 formal knights from the Habsburg Chamber of Commerce. 7 days later, Oper returned to the territory with his men. With a great knight and 10 official knights, Oper was undoubtedly confident. He directly began to notify the other 2 baron lords in the name of his father Pape Lawrence. At the same time, a knight was also sent to the Eagle territory. As for the purpose, of course it was not to give ransom, but to leak information. 2 days later, Thor met the knight sent by the idiot in the Eagle territory. It seems that your second son is not as smart as you. Baron Pape. Thor chuckled and handed the letter to Baron Pape next to him. At this moment, Baron Pape's body has recovered, but his life force has been suppressed. This is what Thor asked Neil Morton to do. Neil Morton did not refuse this kind of trivial matter. So at this moment, facing the knight messenger sent by Oper, Thor also brought this one over directly. Facing Thor's words, Pape Lawrence's heart couldn't help but tremble. He was very clear about what his second son was like, so he quickly took the letter. After reading the contents of the letter. Bang. Asshole. Simply stupid. Even Baron Pape's character couldn't help but show a hint of anger at this moment. Then it turned into a sad look. The anger was that he didn't expect it. He didn't expect that his little son would do this. This was simply to let him and his eldest son die. Damn it, Lawrence, that was the future of their family, and there was even hope that he would break through to the existence of the Earth Knight in the future. The sadness was that his second son could be so stupid. Without him, how could the territory of Lawrence be defended? In the northern province, all lords are hungry wolves. Without the power to protect the territory, they are just a group of lambs. If he were smart, he probably wouldn't do this. He would have to redeem him anyway. Only in this way could the territory be truly preserved. Sir Thor, this is a misunderstanding. That guy is simply stupid. This does not represent the decision of our Lawrence territory. If you are willing, you can release Lawrence first. I believe that Lawrence will give you a satisfactory compensation after he returns. Anger and sadness are spreading. But soon Baron Pape quickly suppressed it. He was not concerned about this at the moment. And he needs to consider that Thor will not chop them all directly in anger. At that time, everything will be over. Baron Pape, you know, this is impossible. But I won't do anything to you for a fool. During this period of time, Baron Pape should live well in the Eagle territory. Thor chuckled and shook his head. Letting Lawrence go is a joke. He is not a fool. As for killing Baron Pape for this reason, he and Lawrence did not have that idea. First, there is no need for that. Second, these two people will be more useful if they stay. Listening to Thor's words, Pape looked bitter. He could already foresee what his territory would look like next, and he was powerless to do anything about it. Pape looked at Thor deeply, and then stopped talking. Thor fell into deep thought. The situation was the same as the scene in the Daily Intelligence. That Opal Lawrence really wanted to kill his father and elder brother. And in this way, the Daily Intelligence would likely unite with other pioneering lords and nobles to attack his territory. Then the storm of war has actually arrived. Next, it will be the most difficult moment for the entire Eagle territory. He needs to face the combined forces of other noble lords. Even if the strength is much worse than that of Lawrence's territory, this strength cannot be underestimated when combined. Of course, once it is past. Even if the coalition of noble lords can be defeated this time, the harvest will be unprecedentedly huge. He will become the true uncrowned king of the main valley. No one will dare to challenge his authority anymore. If he can manage it well, his sphere of influence can even spread to the entire main valley. The construction of the entire territory will directly reach a new level. His eyes flickered, and his thoughts kept flowing. He was thinking about what to do next. And time passed quietly in this situation. The knights that Opper sent to the other two noble lords in the name of his father, Baron Pape Lawrence, also arrived one after another. Just receiving this letter, the other two noble lords were a little stunned. Chapter 63 The Three Great Nobles Unite. The main valley is almost the most fertile area around. In addition to the Eagle Ridge chosen by Thor, there are more than a dozen pioneering lords around the main valley. The best construction is undoubtedly the Lawrence family, followed by the Valmy family and the Graydon family. Although the Valmy family and the Graydon family are not as powerful as the Lawrence family, as they have been canonized as barons 10 years ago, their strength should not be underestimated. With the invitation of the Lawrence family, the lords of the Valmy family and the Graydon family have arrived in the Lawrence territory with their men and horses. However, after arriving, the two lords of the Valmy family and the Graydon family could not help but raise their eyebrows slightly. The entire Lawrence family seems to have changed. The familiar knights in the memory seem to have disappeared, and in their place are completely unfamiliar knights. Master Valmy, have you noticed that something seems to be wrong here? Baron Valmy rode his horse and whispered to Baron Graydon next to him. Something is wrong indeed. These people seem to be hired knights of the Habsburg Chamber of Commerce, not of the Lawrence family. Baron Graydon nodded, and his expression was somewhat suspicious. They naturally knew about the hired knights of the Habsburg Chamber of Commerce. The hired knights of the Habsburg Chamber of Commerce also had exclusive armbands. They could tell at a glance that these were hired knights of the Habsburg Chamber of Commerce. Such a result made them full of doubts. When did the Lawrence family hire the knights of the Habsburg Chamber of Commerce? What are they going to do? The cost of hiring the knights of the Habsburg Chamber of Commerce is not low. Looking at the current scale, the number of people hired is not small, and it is impossible to do it without thousands of gold coins. Thousands of gold coins, both of them were shocked. For them who were established by the pioneering lords, thousands of gold coins are already an astronomical value. Suspicion is spreading. And the footsteps of the two gradually came to the Lawrence castle. But when they arrived at the Lawrence castle, both of them were stunned. The eyebrows were slightly raised. Because the person who appeared outside the castle at this moment was not Pape Lawrence, but a hired knight of the Habsburg Chamber of Commerce, and not just an ordinary knight, but a great knight. The two looked at each other, and they couldn't help but feel a little nervous. The great knight, the annual hiring fee is as high as 1,000 gold coins. At this moment, the Lawrence family actually hired so many formal knights, and even hired a great knight. This must be a big thing. My lords, the Lord has been waiting for a long time. Please follow me. The great knight of the Habsburg Chamber of Commerce spoke softly. Then he led the two to the castle. The two suppressed the ups and downs in their hearts and followed the great knight slowly into the castle. The castle was very large, and it was much more prosperous than their castle. Under the guidance of the great knight of the Habsburg Chamber of Commerce, the two soon arrived at the hall. However, there was no Pape Lawrence in the hall, but a figure that made them frown slightly. Oper, where is your father? This is not a good way to treat guests. Baron Graydon couldn't help but speak first, and his eyes went straight to Opal Lawrence at the top. Baron Valmy next to him didn't speak, but carefully observed the surroundings. Uncle Valmy, Uncle Grattan, I'm really sorry, my father may not be able to come to greet you. Oper Lawrence pretended to be sad. And listening to his words, Valmy and Grattan couldn't help but twitch their eyebrows. Oper, what did you say? Valmy couldn't help but speak. Uncle Valmy, Uncle Grattan, something happened. A few days ago, my father and my eldest brother died in battle. Oper Lawrence spoke with a sigh. What did you say? And listening to his words, Valmy and Grattan couldn't keep calm at this moment. What did they hear? Baron Pape died in battle. This time made them unbelievable. It was just in this kind of disbelief that the two suddenly remembered what they had seen along the way. The disbelief gradually turned into suspicion. And in the suspicion, the eyes began to flicker. The benefits of a barren territory, especially an old barren territory like Lawrence, are undoubtedly extremely huge. Before Baron Pape was still there, they had no idea. They didn't dare to have any ideas. Pape was stronger than them, and Lawrence's territory was also stronger than them. But now it seems that Baron Pape died in battle, and the entire Lawrence territory was greatly damaged. This is completely their opportunity. Thoughts flowed. That's right, my father and my elder brother have died in battle. My father discovered a large iron mine in the lower reaches of the main river valley, so he brought a large number of knights to take it down. Unfortunately, he failed. My father and my elder brother have been killed by their lord. I can only go to the Habsburg Chamber of Commerce to hire some knights to see if I can avenge my father and my elder brother. In addition, I would like to ask my two uncles for help. Oper Lawrence pretended to be more sad. Valmy and Graydon were originally thinking, but at this moment they suddenly widened their eyes and stood up. It's not that they are not calm. But the information brought by Opal Lawrence has given them too much impact. Large iron ore. That's a large iron ore. There is a chance to produce mithril iron, and it is a continuous production of mithril iron. Its value is unimaginable. It can even be said that if a family has a large iron ore, they can have the potential to be promoted to Viscount. At this moment, how can they not be restless? Are you serious? There is really a large iron ore there. Oper, who is the lord there? Isn't there a pioneer lord in the lower reaches of the main valley? Valmy and Graydon couldn't help but speak. At this moment, neither of them was in the mood to care about Pape's death in battle. After all, the temptation of a large iron ore is greater than everything. In comparison, what is the interest of Lawrence's territory? What is Pape's death in battle? Of course it's true. Otherwise, my father wouldn't have brought the elite forces of the territory with him. As for the territory there, it seems to be a newly established pioneer lord, which has just been established in less than half a year. Oper Lawrence nodded and explained slowly. A new pioneer lord. Less than half a year. Valmy and Graydon's eyes lit up at this moment. Chapter 64 Joint Military Operation. Thank you two uncles for your help. I, Opal Lawrence, am grateful. Opal Lawrence pretended to be extremely grateful and even delivered it outside the castle himself. Revenge for Baron Pape is what we should do. Yes, don't worry, we will definitely avenge Baron Pape. That damn Lord of Eagle Ridge is going to be spurned by the goddess of life. Baron Valmy and Baron Graydon spoke one after another with firm words, as if they really wanted to help Baron Pape get revenge. Thank you so much. Opal Lawrence also spoke. Amidst the friendship between the two parties, they parted ways. After leaving, Baron Valmy and Baron Graydon quickly sent knights to investigate the entire situation. They are not fools. It is impossible for Opal Lawrence to take whatever he says. Even if that piece of news is indeed tempting enough. But there are some things that they won't feel at ease without being confirmed. And it seems to be cooperating with them to confirm. A few days later, the knights sent out got the news. Eagle Ridge does have iron ore. They found a large number of knights and traces of a large number of ore transportation dozens of miles away from Eagle Ridge. This news instantly made both of them excited. Dozens of miles. Just kidding, without large iron mines, how could a pioneer lord occupy territory dozens of miles away? This certainly proves what Opal Lawrence said. Baron Valmy and Baron Graydon immediately began to prepare quickly. 3 days later. Graydon Territory. Castle. The situation has been confirmed. The pioneer lord is a descendant of the Dressrosa family. In addition, there are traces of mining within dozens of miles of its territory, which should be the large iron mine discovered by Baron Pape. Baron Graydon spoke in a low voice, his eyes flashing with excitement. That descendant of Dressrosa is not easy to deal with. I have already inquired about it. There are hundreds of trainee knights in its territory, at least more than 20 formal knights, and there is also a great knight. This strength is no less than the strength of our two territories united. Baron Valmy frowned and spoke. Indeed, the Dressrosa family is indeed a count family, and the pioneer lords are not comparable to us. However, we don't need to fight him head-on. We just need to win that large iron mine. Baron Graydon, we can definitely do this. The two people were discussing in the castle. In the two territories, a number of knights began to gather quickly. Compared with the strength of the Lawrence family, they are indeed much weaker, but there are still 5 or 6 formal knights in each territory, as well as their own high knights, and dozens of trainee knights. Including slaves, it can reach more than 2,000 people. The two gatherings amounted to more than 4,000 people. And the two territories are gathering. Thor also quickly got the news. In fact, he deliberately leaked the traces of the mine's location. The purpose is to attract the main forces of the two territories to the location of the mine. At this moment, almost 90% of his strength was gathered in the mine. 5 magic crystal cannons, plus nearly 30 formal knights, hundreds of trainee knights, hundreds of reserve knights, and thousands of slaves are enough to ensure nothing goes wrong. In comparison, the entire Eagle Ridge is almost an empty shell. There is very little strength left. Moreover, the construction of Eagle Ridge has just begun, and he does not want the war to destroy it. Although he had Neil Morton's back, he had already negotiated with Neil Morton. But Thor had no intention of letting this one take action unless absolutely necessary. After all, if you use this thing once, it will undoubtedly be lost once. Sky Knights like Neil Morton can be used in many places in the future. Mine location. 3 days ago, Thor returned again with his men. In the past few days, he has been arranging deployment and preparations for war. In 3 days, everything was almost ready. Just wait for the other party to arrive next. How's the situation? In a room, Thor couldn't help but look at Steve, who had just walked in. Sir, the preparations are complete, and the remaining 2 magic crystal cannons have been placed. Steve nodded and spoke seriously. Good. If we can win it in one fell swoop this time, everyone will get double the merit. Thor laughed and nodded, with a hint of expectation in his expression. If the first battle was his battle to gain a foothold, then this battle is undoubtedly his battle to rise. If he can directly capture the remaining 2 nobles and the entire main valley in one fell swoop, his presence will no longer be shaken. At the same time, he will also gain a large amount of resources to contribute to the subsequent development of the territory. It can be said to be extremely important. Thank you, sir. Steve nodded excitedly. And in preparation, the 2 sides also began to become tense. The atmosphere in the entire main valley suddenly became tense. Even other pioneering lords could vaguely sense this tension. And in this tension, time was passing quickly. 5 days passed in a blink of an eye. When the 6th day arrived, in Valmy territory and Graydon territory, troops began to march towards the mine. At the same time, in Lawrence territory, Opal Lawrence also set out with a large number of troops. As revenge for his father, he naturally sent people. But compared to others, he only sent serfs. And he followed at the end of everyone. His purpose was self-evident. Revenge, of course, was impossible. He just wanted his father and his elder brother to die together. Graydon and Valmy, the two lords, did not care too much about his actions. A Lawrence family that had lost the power of the Great Knight and could only rely on hired knights to maintain itself was no longer a threat to them. As long as they waited for a few years, the Lawrence family would inevitably decline and even disappear. Are you kidding? Thousands of gold coins a year, how can it be so easy to spend? If they spend, the Lawrence family will basically have no gold coins to cultivate their own knights. This will inevitably form a vicious cycle. And more importantly, hired knights are not family knights, and they don't have contracts. In this case, if something goes wrong, no one can be sure. At this moment, the Lawrence family is not as threatening as they are to each other. Chapter 65. War begins, Main Valley in turmoil. Baron Valmy and Baron Graydon sent out their troops in a mighty force, and together with the symbolic dispatch of personnel from the Baron Lawrence territory, the entire Main Valley was completely shaken. Each pioneer lord was a little uneasy. As the strongest in the entire Main Valley, the three noble lords are the true rulers of the Main Valley. At this moment, they actually united, which made other pioneer lords worried. Oh my god, what are they going to do? Goddess of life bless Baron Valmy, Baron Graydon, and there are members of Lawrence territory. My goddess of life, who can tell me what happened? Voices were mixed, and the uneasy mood continued to spread. It was not until a few days later that everyone realized that the knights of the three barren territories were not gathering towards them, but heading towards a new pioneer lord in the west. This instantly made everyone breathe a sigh of relief. After the relief, these pioneer lords were full of curiosity. They didn't know who it was, which lord could actually provoke the three barren lords of the entire Main Valley. They sent out knights one by one. And this made the entire Main Valley lively again. Even some noble lords outside the Main Valley couldn't help but cast their eyes over. But whether it was them or most people outside the Main Valley, they didn't know what was going on at the moment. Although Baron Valmy and Baron Graydon got the news, they naturally couldn't leak such news. As for Opal Lawrence, it was even more impossible. The so-called large iron ore was just an excuse he made up. It was enough to fool the two barren territories. Or to be more precise, it was enough to let Eagle Ridge know that he brought people and even lured other nobles to attack Eagle Ridge. In Opal Lawrence's view, as long as the Lord of Eagle Ridge knew this, his father and eldest brother would have no chance of survival. In this way, he would not have any problems inheriting Lawrence's territory. Of course, Opal Lawrence did not know at this moment that the Lord of Eagle Ridge, Dressrosa, did not care about these things at all. His behavior made Thor determined to make a choice. The night gradually passed. The atmosphere around the entire Main Valley became more and more tense. 5 days later, the soldiers led by Baron Valmy and Baron Graydon were only 30 miles away from the mine. They would arrive in another day. At the same time, a large number of knights began to wander around. It was obviously the scouts sent by the two barons. But they were destined to be disappointed. As before, Thor directly recalled all the knights and retreated to the mine. There was no obstacle on the way. Even though his strength at this moment was not much inferior to the combined strength of the two barons, he only lacked a great knight. But he did the same. Just kidding, every bit of strength is extremely precious to him at this moment, so it is naturally impossible to waste it in vain. And the news that the knight has discovered. Baron Valmy and Baron Graydon could not help but hesitate. Are you sure there is no ambush of Eagle Ridge around there? Baron Valmy asked the knight he sent out with disbelief. Sure. There is no ambush in the entire surrounding area. I'm afraid they have retreated to the mine, or have given up. The knight spoke respectfully, with a relaxed look. Okay, I know. Baron Valmy nodded, frowned slightly, and a doubt flashed in his heart. Baron Graydon on the other side was almost the same after receiving the news. In doubt, the two hesitated slightly and decided to meet. Although they were tempted by the large iron ore, they were not fools. They dared not neglect Eagle Ridge and the heir of Dressrosa. After all, the other party defeated Baron Pape. even though the other party's strength should have been greatly reduced due to a battle that just broke out. But we should still be careful. Sir Baron Valmy, you should have received the news. There are no knights from Eagle Ridge ahead. This seems a little abnormal. Baron Graydon frowned and looked at Baron Valmy, who came in, and spoke in a deep voice. Not necessarily. Not long ago, Baron Pape attacked here, so Eagle Ridge may have suffered a lot of damage. Knowing that we are here, they may have chosen to evacuate on their own initiative. Baron Valmy also frowned, but after hearing Baron Graydon's words, he shook his head and spoke with a thoughtful tone. Baron Valmy, this is possible. However, I have to remind you that the one in Eagle Ridge is not a pioneer knight like us, but a descendant of the Dressrosa family. Those people are not weak. What if it is not the case? Or, what if that one informed the Dressrosa family? Baron Graydon's heart moved, as if thinking about something, but soon shook his head and spoke with a solemn tone. Yes, indeed, they are different from us. But there are more than one heir of the Dressrosa family, and the support they can provide may not be certain. As for notifying the family, you should know that Marquis Lehman has banned the outflow of resources. Compared with that Marquis, the Dressrosa family is just an earl. That's unlikely. But you are right, it's right for us to be careful. Let's do this, we can send 2 knight groups to try first. Valmy shook his head, and then seemed to think of something, and added again. Not bad. We can try. Baron Graydon's eyes lit up. Soon the 2 barons made a decision. That is to test it first. After all, no one knows how strong Eagle Ridge is. In addition, Baron Pape was destroyed, so they had to be vigilant. No one knows what they will encounter if they attack rashly. If they can't compete, they don't want to end up like Baron Pape. They were just wandering knights who were granted titles by pioneering lords. Once they died, their territory would be completely lost, and they would not have the opportunity to hire knights from the Habsburg Chamber of Commerce like the Lawrence family. The 2 knight groups set off quickly. Most of them were reserve knight groups. The strongest ones only had 2 official knights and a dozen apprentice knights. Chapter 66. Same as before. The knights sent by the 2 barons to explore the mine soon arrived at the mine. Looking at the sparse troops, Thor couldn't help but frown, with a puzzled look. My lord, Baron Valmy and Baron Graydon's troops stopped at 20 miles and stopped moving forward. Steve spoke respectfully and reported the information he had obtained. Got it. Let's do this, Steve. You take 3 official knights, 20 apprentice knights, and the serfs we captured before to meet them. Stop them first. If they are invincible, just choose to retreat. Don't worry about the slaves. You have to let them know that our mine is very weak now, very weak, and they can take it at any time. Thor's eyes flickered, and he quickly understood what was going on. He looked at Steve, hesitated for a moment, and then gave an order. Obviously, Baron Valmy and Baron Graydon were extremely vigilant and wanted to test it. As for the reason, it is likely that he captured Baron Pape, which made them a little worried. In this case, he asked the 2 to test it carefully. He had no slave contracts for the captured serfs, so it was almost impossible for him to control them. It was just right to use them to test the other side's troops and horses. Yes. Steve was a little confused, but he responded quickly. He would not have any objection to Thor's order. The troops gathered soon. Thousands of slaves gathered, and they were extremely chaotic. Under the pressure of the knights, they barely stabilized. Then Steve drew out the knight's sword in his hand. Goddess of life bless you. May victory bless you. Then the next moment, the huge troops rushed directly down to the mine. The large number of troops appeared, which frightened the 2 knights. But when they saw the huge troops clearly, all the knights couldn't help but smile. Ha ha ha, it seems that Eagle Ridge has no power, and even the slaves have been sent out. The knight commander of Baron Graydon couldn't help laughing. At the same time, the knight commander of Baron Valmy next to him couldn't help but smile. Kill. After the 2 smiled, they drew their knight swords and their voices rang out. The next moment, one knight after another drew his knight's sword, and the horses began to speed up and rushed towards the huge crowd of people in front. The 2 knights did not have many people, only less than 100 people. But these people rushed into the huge crowd of people like wolves into a flock of sheep. A large number of slaves were directly crushed. Many slaves started to run away directly. And some were hit by horses and flew up without time. The whole battlefield fell into chaos. Steve carried a knight's gun and even pushed through the crowd. The great knight's cultivation made him no match at all. Even the formal knights had to retreat under his power. But soon, he was spotted. 3 formal knights from Baron Graydon's knights and Baron Valmy's knights rushed out and surrounded Steve. Boom! The life force burst out, Steve's breath shook, and he wanted to break away. But the 6 people held him tightly. Although the power of the formal knights was not as good as that of the great knights, the 6 people were enough to hold him back. Similarly, many knights besides Steve were also held back. And a large number of serfs began to flee at the moment the battle began. The whole venue seemed particularly chaotic. There were shouts and cries everywhere. And the sound of slaves fleeing. Steve's face was ugly. The next moment, he did not hesitate. Boom! A huge life force burst out, instantly repelling the 6 people. Retreat! Steve shouted loudly, and the next moment he pulled the reins and quickly retreated to the back. The other formal knights and apprentice knights did the same. Because the venue was extremely chaotic, everyone evacuated very quickly. In the end, only a few reserve knights failed to escape and were left behind, and the others evacuated smoothly. After evacuating, Steve quickly returned to the mine with his men and horses. As for the slaves, he ignored them. After all, Thor had already said not to pay attention to them, so he naturally couldn't pay attention to them. My lord. Steve was covered in blood and spoke to Thor respectfully. Well done. That's enough. Thor nodded, and stood up all of a sudden, with a message on his face. And he smiled. On the other side, Baron Valmy and Baron Graydon's eyes suddenly lit up. Are you telling the truth? Graydon looked at his knight commander, and his breathing became heavy. It's true, my lord. But there is a great knight there. Baron Graydon nodded, and then spoke respectfully. A great knight. It's worthy of the Dressrosa family. Even so, there is still a great knight here. But we can't be stopped by just one great knight. Baron Valmy chuckled and spoke, and at this moment his face was also excited. There is no way. The answer given to them in this initial test was too gratifying. Although Eagle Ridge still has some strength, there are only some slaves and a few formal knights. Even with a great knight, the strength is not strong. If it is just one family, there will be some problems, but now that the 2 families are united, it will definitely not be a big problem to solve the others. Baron Valmy and Baron Graydon looked at each other secretly. Some thoughts came to their minds. Of course, they are just thoughts at present. After all, the other party is the heir of the Dressrosa family, and its strength cannot be underestimated. Even if it has been determined that it is enough to take it down, before taking it down, the 2 still suppressed these thoughts. As they rose step by step from wandering knights, they knew very well what to do when. Soon, the 2 issued orders one by one. Then a large number of people and horses began to set off and headed towards the mine. The people and horses were so powerful that even if no one was sent to explore this time, they could see the huge movement in the distance. On the hillside, looking at the huge crowd, Thor couldn't help but smile. Get ready. Steve, take your troops to the right. Mark, take the rest to the left. Remember, just like last time, don't let anyone go. Thunder will stay if he surrenders, and will execute anyone who escapes. Thor opened his mouth and quickly issued orders. Chapter 67. Same as before. Orders were issued one after another. More than 30 official knights, hundreds of trainee knights, and hundreds of reserve knights were all arranged by Thor to go out and spread out to the surrounding areas. On the high platform of the mine, the magic crystal cannons were already equipped with magic cores. The charging had been completed and they only needed to be fired. On the other side, Baron Valmy and Baron Graydon were in high spirits at this moment, and they led a large number of troops to march towards the mine. At this moment, both of them were already imagining their huge gains after taking over the mine. That was a large iron mine. As long as he could get it, the benefits to him would be unimaginable. In their excitement, a large number of troops were getting closer and closer to the mine. But as the troops gradually approached, the surroundings were still very quiet. The knights they sent out to test before encountered resistance from a large knight led by a great knight. But this time, even if they approached 3 miles, no troops appeared. Ha ha ha, it seems they have all escaped. Goddess of life. Baron Valmy laughed and spoke with excitement. What a pity for the descendants of Dressrosa. By the way, is there any other smell here? Baron Graydon also agreed with a smile, and his nose twitched slightly, speaking with a bit of doubt. It should be the smell of ore being refined in the mine. It was said that this place was the territory of the goblins before, and those damn goblins were too dirty. Baron Valmy didn't care at all, waved his hand and spoke casually. That's right. Baron Graydon smiled and nodded, and didn't care too much. After all, Eagle Ridge had obviously sent out all its forces in the previous test. As a result, they were defeated by the knights they used for the test. In this case, if they don't leave, what are they waiting for? But in their excitement, they didn't notice that the sounds around them seemed to be much smaller, and the strange smell was not a bad smell. And such negligence ruined their last chance. When the mine ahead was gradually visible. The next moment, a knight seemed to see something, and a hint of doubt appeared in his expression. What is that? He whispered, but no one noticed him. But then, blue magic circles on the hillside lit up. The bright light illuminated the dusk sky. At this moment, even those who had not noticed it noticed it. Baron Graydon and Baron Valmy were stunned at first, and then their pupils suddenly widened. Not good. A cry of surprise. And at the moment of the cry. Boom. Boom. A huge roar resounded throughout the sky, and the terrifying sea of AA thunder covered the surrounding area of AA hundreds of meters at this moment. Thunder roared, and the terrifying high temperature spread to the entire surroundings. The fierce fire oil that had been laid out long ago, at this moment, burned directly under the thunder. Last time, Thor bought a lot of fierce fire oil again. It didn't work before, that's unnecessary. This time, for better effect, Thor prepared a lot of fierce fire oil. At this moment, in the roar of the sea of AA thunder, these fierce fire oils were immediately ignited. The roar and the sea of AA fire were spreading. For a time, all the people and horses were in a panic. The horses were neighing. The slaves were panicking. The knights were at a loss. And Baron Valmy and Baron Graydon were thrown out at the first time. Although the sea of AA thunder did not greet them all, their long-term combat experience also allowed them to raise the life source shield at the first time. But the sea of AA thunder was still too terrifying. Their internal organs were shaking. What made them open their eyes wide and breathe heavily was that one knight after another turned into charcoal in the sea of AA thunder. As great knights, as long as they did not bombard head-on, and with the second-level magic core, they were naturally not in danger of life, but other knights were not so lucky. Even formal knights found it difficult to resist this violent force. As for the trainee knight, it would be turned into charcoal almost instantly. Oh my god. That was the family heritage they had accumulated for more than 10 years. It quickly melted away in front of their eyes, which was simply unacceptable to them. Asshole. Damn it. Baron Valmy roared, his life force bursting out. However, he was just preparing to move. Boom. The terrifying sea of AA thunder exploded not far from him in an instant, and powerful shock waves and thunder covered him instantly. Puff. A mouthful of blood spurted out, and the next moment his figure flew backwards like a kite with a broken string, and fell directly into the distance. Ah! Help! Ah! Screams and cries filled the entire sea of AA fire. The entire thousands of people and horses were in complete chaos in an instant. And in the chaos, kill. Steve and Mark led their men and horses to kill directly from the left and right. A large number of slaves surrounded these people from all sides. Unlike the slaves before, these slaves' eyes were shining as they looked at the figures in the sea of AA fire. Those were all merit points. As long as they get enough merit points, they can become free people, get women, and even become noble knights. The two of them gathered more than 5,000 people. Among them, there were 2 great knights, and there were more than a dozen formal knights, and the total number of knights exceeded 500. But under a round of bombardment by the magic crystal cannon, 5 of the dozen formal knights were killed on the spot, and 2 great knights were seriously injured. As for the knights, more than 1/3 of the people were buried under the magic crystal cannon, and many of the remaining people were covered by the sea of AA fire. In this case, the people led by Steve almost directly captured the remaining people like a whirlwind. And thousands of slaves surrounded the remaining people under the mine, and no one escaped. And compared to the last time, because of the addition of fierce fire oil this time, Thor's side suffered less losses. Only a few dozen slaves were lost. It can be said that it was a great victory. And what surprised Thor even more was that, like the last time, Baron Valmy and Baron Graydon were also captured. Although the two barren territories could not be as rich as Lawrence's territory, he would definitely gain a lot by capturing the two barons. There was even an idea that appeared in his mind involuntarily. Maybe we can try. Thor couldn't help but fall into deep thought when a whispering voice spoke. And after the battle here ended. On the other side, Opal Lawrence, who led his men to Eagle Ridge, was directly defeated by the knights led by Ryan and the slave army. That's right, he was directly defeated. Although he hired a great knight and 10 formal knights, the men he brought this time were only a few formal knights. Facing the knights led by Ryan, they were no match at all. They were defeated in just one encounter. Opal Lawrence had to flee in a hurry. 500 or 600 slaves and a dozen trainee knights were left behind again. When Thor got the news 2 days later, he couldn't help but smile when he saw the news. Not letting Neil Morton take action was undoubtedly the best result. As the news spread, he immediately sent a message to Ryan, asking him to go to Lauren City again. Chapter 68. Let's talk about war compensation. Time passes quickly. 10 days later, when Ren returned from Lauren City, Baron Valmy and Baron Graydon had recovered. Thor also asked Neil Morton to ban him, and then placed the two of them together with Baron Pape. Baron Valmy. Baron Graydon. In the room, looking at the two people who were also sent over, Pape Lawrence had a look of astonishment on his face. Baron Pape, are you alive? Baron Valmy and Baron Graydon couldn't help but be stunned for a moment, and spoke with astonishment. And listening to the words of the two people, Baron Graydon's face couldn't help but darken. Even if you die, I won't die. Why? You were captured by that Turdresrosa too. Pappy Lawrence spoke in an annoyed tone. Baron Pape, this is not what we said, it was your son. Baron Valmy spoke quickly. Yes, your son said that you were killed by the Lord of Eagle Ridge. Baron Graydon also spoke. As the two exchanged words, Pape Lawrence quickly understood what was going on, and as a result, his face became darker and darker. He knew before that he was using his son to unite the two barons to launch an attack, but he did not expect that his son would directly announce his death. Asshole. Damn it. Pappy Lawrence couldn't help but speak. Seeing the anger of Papyrus, Baron Valmy and Baron Graydon couldn't help but smile in their dull hearts at this moment. When you are unlucky, it is undoubtedly a pleasant thing to see someone who is more unlucky than yourself. Crunch. It seems that some of them are recovering well. While the three of them were talking, the door made a soft sound, and then Thor slowly walked in with a chuckle. Looking at Thor walking in, Baron Valmy and Baron Graydon had some surprises in their eyes. No way, Thor's aura is not very powerful. In other words, extremely weak. At least they are much weaker than the Great Knights. Judging from the aura, it was obvious that he was just a trainee knight. But the surprise lasted only a moment. Because soon Pappy Lawrence spoke. Lord Thor, I'm so sorry. I can make a soul contract, and I will definitely deliver the ransom you need. Please allow me to return to the territory. Pappy Lawrence spoke with a sigh. The defeat and capture of Baron Valmy and Baron Graydon made him know exactly what he should do at this moment. If he continues to let his second son take charge of the Lawrence territory, the entire territory will inevitably be destroyed, so no matter how high the price is, he must return to the territory. Of course you can. Well, Baron Pappy Lawrence, what do you think of this? If you agree, you can leave at any time. Thor chuckled, then waved his hand, and Ren beside him quickly moved forward and handed a parchment to Pappy Lawrence. Papyrus took it. His eyes immediately focused on it. Just by looking at it, his pupils couldn't help but shrink violently. You. When Pappy Lawrence spoke, he was filled with anger. How about Baron Pappy Lawrence? Thor chuckled and didn't explain anything. But it was this chuckle that made Pape Lawrence instantly depressed. I agree. The hoarse voice spoke, and Pappy Lawrence suddenly seemed to be getting older. Then sign the contract. Thor chuckled and nodded. Papyrus didn't hesitate any longer. The life force in his right hand surged and he cut his fingers open, and bright red blood dripped down. Buzz. Blood dripped, and a strange magic circle lit up in an instant. Then Pappy Lawrence's body was directly wrapped in it. Oh, by the way, the contract, Lawrence, please get one too. Thor chuckled lightly and looked at Lawrence not far away. Lawrence. Pappy Lawrence spoke. Lawrence hesitated, but still came forward. But when he took the parchment and saw the content on it, his eyes widened as well. This. Father. Lawrence couldn't help but speak and looked at his father. Sign it. Pappy Lawrence sighed softly and couldn't help but close his eyes. Listening to his father's words, Lawrence could only sigh and also dripped his own blood. Buzz. The ripples spread and the contract was established. Thor raised his hand, and the next moment, the contract was returned to his hand. And to reach this moment, Baron Valmy and Baron Graydon couldn't help but become nervous. They didn't know what was in the contract, but they knew it was definitely not a good thing. How to not make them nervous? Lord Thor, we are the ones responsible for the offense this time. I wonder how much ransom we need. Baron Valmy spoke nervously. Yes, Lord Thor, we can pay the ransom. Baron Graydon also spoke quickly. Of course, let's do this. Ren will give a share of the ransom rules to the two barons. Thor smiled and nodded, then gestured to Ryan next to him. Yes. Ryan smiled and nodded, and also handed over a parchment scroll. But this one is not a contract. It is just a simple ransom rule. No, this is impossible. The two took it, but only for a moment. Baron Valmy instantly raised his head, looked at Thor, and spoke with disbelief. Sir Thor, forgive me, this is impossible. Baron Graydon also spoke. What a joke. This ransom is impossible. They need to redeem themselves with 3,000 gold coins, 500 gold coins for each formal knight, 100 gold coins for each apprentice knight, and 3,000 serfs and 2,000 gold coins for war compensation. Such expenses are simply not something they can afford. Selling the entire territory is more like it. Of course you don't need to pay the ransom, just sign this contract. Thor chuckled and then gestured to the contract in his hand. Sir Thor, can you take a look first? Baron Valmy and Baron Graydon looked at each other, and finally Baron Graydon spoke. Of course. Thor smiled and nodded, then waved his hand, and the contract floated to where the two were. The two looked at each other, and Baron Graydon first took the contract and opened it. Just when he opened it, Graydon's pupils couldn't help but shrink violently. What's wrong? Looking at Baron Graydon's expression change, Baron Valmy couldn't help but speak. Take a look. Baron Graydon handed the contract to Baron Valmy, and then fell into deep thought. My God, this is impossible. Valmy just took it, and his eyes showed disbelief, and his eyes instantly looked at Thor. You two, I have to remind you that you have no choice. You are not as rich as the Lawrence family. Without you, the two territories will probably be destroyed in a short time. Thor chuckled, with a calm expression. The two of them paused for a moment, their faces changing constantly. Chapter 69 Baron Pape's Anger. Thor's contract was very simple. After signing the contract, they had to obey Thor's orders, send their legitimate son to Eagle Ridge to join his knights, and pay 1,000 gold coins per year for further study. Well, it should be called tax to be more accurate. It was just described in a more euphemistic way. Compared with the previous ransom, this was naturally much less. But once this contract was signed, they would become a subsidiary of Eagle Ridge. This was simply unacceptable to them. This was also the main reason why they found it difficult to accept at the first time. However, whether it was Papalorens, Baron Valmy, or Baron Graydon, they actually had no choice. The Lawrence territory did have a stronger strength, but that person was a fool. Papalorens knew very well that if he handed over the territory to his son, it would probably take less than 2 years for the entire Lawrence territory to be destroyed. As for the other two, they were not much better. It is true that their eldest son still stayed in the territory, and he was not as stupid as Baron Pape's second son, but their territory was not as good as Lawrence's territory. After losing their great knight, they still had a large number of elite knights. The result is needless to say. I agree to sign the contract. Baron Graydon sighed, then stepped forward and signed the contract as well. Baron Graydon, you. Baron Valmy looked at him with disbelief at Baron Graydon's actions. We have no choice. Baron Graydon sighed and shook his head. There seemed to be two choices, but in fact Baron Graydon knew very well that he had only one choice. Because for the first choice, he could not afford such a huge expenditure of gold coins unless he sold all the territory. Sir Thor, you win. Baron Valmy heard Baron Graydon's words and sighed, and the next moment he also stepped forward. Buzz. Ripples spread, and the next moment the magic circle also covered them. The contract was established. A strong restraining force spread directly to them at this moment. They had to obey. In Lawrence territory, Thor still had to worry about Baron Pape abandoning himself, but he didn't worry about the remaining two. The right choice. You three, you can leave now. Remember to send the personnel here within 7 days, and then the seal in your body will be lifted. Thor chuckled, then raised his hand, and the contract flew back to his hand again. The three sighed and then left the door. The captured formal knights and trainee knights outside chose to release them. As for the slaves, of course he kept them. Even the three had to send the slave contracts over. Although they were a little unwilling, they didn't say anything in the end. After all, the power of these knights is the most important. As long as these powers can be preserved, the loss of slaves is a loss. And watching the three groups of people leave, Thor couldn't help but smile. The contract book, this is what he asked Ryan to buy in Lucerne City before. It cost him a full 1,000 gold coins. However, the effect is also extremely huge. The three people signed the contract, which also means that at this moment, the three barren territories have become his subordinate territories. Although there is no huge gain from direct annexation. But it is also enough to guarantee his absolute hegemony in the entire main valley. As for direct annexation, that is not what needs to be considered at present. After all, at this moment, there are still large territories in the entire Eagle Ridge that have not been completed. It is not a wise choice to annex territories dozens of miles away now. On the contrary, it is the best choice to incorporate them into his subordinate territories. On the one hand, he can mobilize their power like high-level nobles, and on the other hand, it will help him integrate the entire main valley and make full preparations for subsequent development. You must know that his goal is not Baron or Viscount, but to go higher. Even the entire Northland province. These are enemies at present, and they will be his power in the future. Every Baron Lord who can rise in the Northland province is not a simple existence. If he can obtain their submission, his future will be unimaginable. Eyes converge. After watching everyone leave, he returned to the castle. In the room, the next step is to develop with peace of mind. Thor whispered, and his thoughts could not help but fall into deep thought, and his eyes looked at the map. Creaky. The door made a slight sound. Anna walked in carefully, put down a plate of fruit gently, and then left carefully. A moment. Thor woke up, looked at the fruit next to him, and then looked at the drawer that did not move at all, and a smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. It is obvious that the half-elf girl has gradually gotten used to it in the past few months. She didn't even think about stealing the slave contract. You know, before, this person always wanted to escape. Now that he can reach this step, it means that there has been a big change. With a smile on his face, Thor couldn't help but look at the map in front of him again. The external threat has been resolved. Except for the fool on the west side, the entire main valley has been subdued by him. Although there are still some pioneering lords, with the surrender of the three noble lords, those pioneering lords will no longer have any problems. Next, he needs to consider the issue of territory construction. As a lord, war is not the main thing, development is the most important thing. Moreover, if Thor does not make good use of such a fertile place in the main valley, he feels that he is blaspheming the goddess of life. As for how to use it, he has already had an idea, but he lacked manpower before. But now, the three lords have sent him thousands of slaves, and he can undoubtedly take action. No, I still need some talents. After a slight hesitation, Thor shook his head again. And just when Thor began to think about the next construction, the three lords gradually returned to their own territories. Lawrence territory. Looking at the returning father. Opal Lawrence panicked. Father, father. Opal Lawrence spoke with a trembling and disbelief. However, bang. A dull sound came up, and the next moment Opal Lawrence's body flew out. Don't call me father, I don't have a son like you. Pape Lawrence's angry voice sounded. For a moment, everyone in the castle was trembling. Even the Baroness, who was about to speak, lowered her head at this moment, her heart full of uneasiness. No one thought that Pape Lawrence could come back. Subscribe to Chinese Novel Audiobook YouTube channel. Chapter 70 Shocked Liao Shasad. Thor naturally didn't know what was happening in Lawrence territory at the moment. It had nothing to do with him, and he didn't care. After the external environment of the entire Eagle Ridge stabilized, the next step was undoubtedly the time for the entire territory to develop vigorously. With the two battles, he not only gained a large number of slaves, but also a large number of slaves were able to obtain a large number of merits, among which many were enough to obtain the status of freeman. Half a month later, after the statistics were completed, Thor directly announced the liberation of 300 serfs. At the same time, 20 people were qualified to join the reserve knights. And such a result undoubtedly made both the freemen and serfs in Eagle Ridge excited. Proof after proof undoubtedly made them feel proud. Everyone worked harder and more attentively. The construction of the entire territory also reached a high-speed stage. Half a month later, where the stable is, Thor looked at the extremely docile unicorn in front of him, and a hint of surprise appeared in his eyes. He didn't expect that in just 1 month, Alan actually tamed the unicorn leader in front of him. Master, this unicorn should only take about half a year to complete the advancement. Now it can be ridden, there will be no problem. Alan spoke respectfully and reported to Thor. Good. You are very good, you go to Ryan, he will register your merit points with you. Thor nodded, his face full of joy. Without any hesitation, he turned over and jumped on the unicorn. Feeling that there was suddenly an extra heavy object on his body, the unicorn did not struggle as hard as before, but seemed particularly quiet. This undoubtedly means that the other party has been tamed. Thor pulled the reins. The unicorn immediately began to move. He manipulated the unicorn to gallop around for a while, feeling the wind pressure whistling beside his ears. Thor's smile became more and more intense. The unicorn at the peak of the second level has such amount. As long as he completes the contract next, he can escape even if he faces the Earth Knight. Not to mention, the unicorn in front of him will soon advance to the third level. Once he enters the third level, he will probably be able to deal with most crises in the northern province. My lord, Mr. Liosh has returned. We will arrive at Eagle Ridge in an hour. As soon as Thor stopped, a knight quickly stepped forward to report. Liosh. Okay, let's go and greet him. Thor was stunned for a moment, then nodded, pulled the reins, and headed out of Eagle Ridge. A knight followed behind him. At the same time, on the road, Liosh and his party marched towards Eagle Ridge in a mighty manner. In the caravan, Liosh Assad fell into thought. These few months of trade have made him extremely profitable. For the first time, his profit exceeded 500 gold coins. But this time, he made much more than the first time. With 3 sets of silver armor, black iron armor, and the supplies he brought, his profit exceeded 3,000 gold coins. It can be said that this is the biggest gain since he arrived in the northern province. And it can be expected that this is just the beginning. During this period, although he was doing business, he had already understood the situation of the war. Eagle Ridge not only defeated the Lawrence territory, but also defeated the 2 lords Valmy and Graydon, becoming the true uncrowned king of the entire main valley. Last time, he walked on the trade route. Not every pioneering lord gave him face. Some lords even planned to rob him. If Thor had not given him many knights, he would have been robbed. But this time, with the news of Eagle Ridge's victory, the pioneering lords along the way were very polite to him and did not dare to neglect him at all. Even the transaction price given was higher than usual. This made his business trip this time much more profitable than the first time before. Otherwise, he might not be able to come back alive with such a huge fortune. Of course, compared to the income, Liosh Assad cares more about the existence of Eagle Ridge. Such a powerful lord gave him hope, a hope that made him restless. Maybe, I can really do it. With his eyes flashing, Liosh Assad was excited. At this moment, a thought that he had never thought of before came up involuntarily. And as he was thinking, in front, Thor had already ridden over. And when he saw clearly what Thor was riding, Liosh Assad couldn't help but shrink his pupils. My God, my friend, you are really incredible. This is a unicorn at the peak of the second level, right? Liosh Assad spoke with shock, his eyes fixed on the unicorn. With his eyes, he recognized the level of this unicorn in an instant, which undoubtedly gave him more shock. This is a unicorn, and a peak level second order unicorn. It is incredible that Thor is riding it. Yes, this is an unexpected harvest a few days ago. My friend, welcome back. Seeing your smile, I know that this harvest is very good. Thor smiled and nodded. His expression was very casual. But his casualness made Liosh Assad even more shocked. Yes, my friend, because of your victory, you know that the goods are more sellable than usual. Although Liosh was shocked, he spoke quickly. Oh, that's really good news. Let's go, I have prepared a rich dinner, my friend, you should be hungry. Thor's eyes lit up, and then he chuckled and spoke. Indeed. I haven't eaten for 6 hours. Liosh also smiled and spoke. Thor then welcomed Liosh into Eagle Ridge. In 2 months, Eagle Ridge has undoubtedly changed a lot again, and the changes are almost visible to the naked eye. Looking at Eagle Ridge at this moment, Liosh couldn't help but pause in his heart. He has also seen many pioneering lords along the way. Such a level of development has never been seen before. He couldn't imagine how Thor did it. And unlike other territories that had no vitality at all, the entire Eagle Ridge seemed to be full of vitality, whether it was free people or serfs. My friend, your territory gives me great surprises every time I come here. Liosh Assad couldn't help but sigh and speak. Chapter 71. Count Engel's Accident. The banquet at Eagle Ridge was held soon. A sumptuous banquet. Liosh Assad and Thor talked about the trade route in the past few months. Thor talked about the pioneering war that broke out this time. The two of them talked one by one, and the whole banquet seemed particularly cheerful. My friend, congratulations, now you will be the true uncrowned king of the main valley. I think our Chamber of Commerce, it is a good choice to name it, Eagle Chamber of Commerce. Liosh Assad praised and spoke, as if he thought of something, and suddenly spoke. Eagle Chamber of Commerce. Indeed, this seems to be a good choice. But this Chamber of Commerce is not only mine, but also yours, Liosh Assad, how about calling it Liosh Eagle Chamber of Commerce? Thor's heart moved, looking at the somewhat nervous Liosh Assad, he couldn't help but smile on his face, and the words began immediately. Thank you for your generosity, my friend. Hearing Thor's words, Liosh's expression was delighted and he spoke quickly. No, I said, the Chamber of Commerce is mine and yours, isn't it? My friend. Thor said with a smile. He didn't care too much about the name of the Chamber of Commerce. In comparison, it is undoubtedly a better choice to win over Liosh. Liosh has undoubtedly proved his ability in the past two trades. For such talents, Thor will not miss it. It's just adding a name. The profit distribution will not change anyway. The most important thing is to be able to tie Liosh Assad firmly to his chariot. Yes, this is ours. My friend. Liosh Assad smiled and nodded. With excitement. Cheers to tomorrow. I believe that the Liosh Eagle Chamber of Commerce will have a better tomorrow. Thor smiled and nodded, then raised the glass in his hand. Cheers to tomorrow. Liosh also raised his glass. The banquet is over. 3 days later. Liosh set out again. This time there was no silver armor. But there were more than 300 black iron armors, and some items obtained in these days. In addition, Neil Morton also left with Liosh Assad. Where to go, Thor didn't know. He only knew that Neil Morton seemed to need to go out for a while. Thor naturally couldn't stop this. Although he lost the powerful force of a Sky Knight, his territory was not weak at the moment, and he didn't need to worry about anything. After seeing the two off, he put his mind on the construction of the territory again. Especially planning the large fertile land where the main river valley is located. The land here is extremely fertile, but no one chooses it. The most fundamental reason is waterlogging. If Eagle Ridge wants to be stable, this problem must be solved. But it's not so easy to solve. Even if he has certain ideas, it will take a long time to perfect them. And Thor is immersed in perfecting his ideas. Thousands of miles away. In the Frost Moon Province, Dressrosa territory, Engel Dressrosa also received a letter from his son Tor Dressrosa a few months later. Dear father, my Tor Dressrosa, your son, blessed by the goddess of life, is doing well in the development of the territory, but he has encountered some minor troubles at the moment. The Eagle territory now has 3,000 people, and most of the affairs need to be handled. Your son feels more and more tired. I hope to get your help, father. Here you are. The words came into view one by one, and Earl Engel Dressrosa looked a little surprised. Ha ha ha, it seems that my son did a good job. Earl Engel Dressrosa put down the letter in his hand, and a satisfied look appeared on his face. Tor Dressrosa, his ninth son, Earl Engel Dressrosa didn't care too much. First, the other party's knight talent can only be regarded as average. Second, the other party did not show too much intelligence. But unexpectedly, before adulthood, the other party gave him a surprise. Not only did he break through to become an apprentice knight in adulthood, but he also subdued a guardian knight with great potential. And he resolutely chose to become a pioneer knight. In this case, he decided to give the other party a support. A very generous gift. Second only to the second son who became a pioneer lord that year. Compared with other pioneer lords, he has more. This is an investment that he doesn't even know whether it will bear fruit. After all, it is the northern province. In this generation of his descendants, in addition to Thor, the ninth son, there are a total of 3 pioneer lords. However, in just a few years, there is only one left. Whether Thor can survive, even he dare not guarantee it. But he didn't expect that in less than a year, Turdressosa actually mailed him a letter. He wanted him to support some affairs officers. Although he only needed affairs officers, Count Engeldressosa could see from it that Turdressosa should have completed the basic development. Even the construction is very good. Only in this way will a large number of affairs officers be needed. Charlie. After pondering for a moment, Count Engeldressosa softly called out the door. My lord Count. Butler Charlie walked in and bowed respectfully. Go and call the Dressrosa town affairs officer. Count Engeldressosa spoke softly. Yes. Charlie nodded, and then quickly retreated. Afternoon. A middle-aged man walked into Dressrosa Castle. My lord Count. The clerk spoke respectfully. Olivedo, I need you to mobilize some affairs officers. I need people who are proficient in handling affairs. How many people can you mobilize? Count Engeldressosa raised his head, looked at the middle-aged man, and spoke inquiringly. Secretary officer. My lord Earl, it should be enough to mobilize more than a dozen people. The middle-aged man pondered for a moment and answered. Okay. You go and pick 5 people, I need to send them to my young eagle of Dressrosa. Count Engeldressosa nodded and then gave some instructions. Yes. The middle-aged man was a little surprised, but he nodded quickly. Charlie. After Count Engeldressosa spoke, he looked at the butler Charlie again. Go and gather some carpenters, masons, and some workers, and select 100 people. Count Engeldressosa spoke again. Yes. Butler Charlie also responded quickly. Soon, people began to gather quickly. Count Engeldressosa, now that he knew that his son had completed the basic development, he undoubtedly started the second batch of support. This time he not only prepared 5 elite affairs officers, but also a large number of craftsmen. At the same time, a group of knights were added again. Although there were not so many formal knights this time, only 10 formal knights as guards and hundreds of reserve knights, he gave it to a great knight. This was originally planned to be given to Turdressosa after he became a baron, but now that Thor is doing well, he is ready to give it in advance. Happy New Year everyone. I'm still struggling with coding during the Chinese New Year. Can you give me some votes to support me? I won a T-check for typos today, haha. In addition, the author Junji Fubao sent out a red envelope with passwords 52,370,402 and 48,043,102. You can get it. I wish you all a happy new year. There are a total of 200 yuan and 60 red envelopes. Please give me a thought, haha. Chapter 72 Reservoir, The Joy of Harvest. Thor didn't know that his father had prepared another generous gift for him, and even gave him a great knight as support this time. After bidding farewell to Lyosh Assad, he devoted all his attention to the construction of the territory again. The 2 wars ended. External threats. At least the threat of the surrounding development territories can be said to be completely resolved. Especially quickly. Baron Valmy and Baron Graydon sent their hostages, respectively, and the entire territory no longer had any problems. And in this way, he can naturally build wholeheartedly. And the first step in the construction of the territory is naturally to open up the wasteland. The scope of the main valley is large enough. It not only has 3 noble lords and 7 development lords, but strictly speaking, there are 5 development lords including the Emerson family, but they are still some distance away from the main valley. The main reason why so many pioneering lords gathered here, and even enough to give birth to 3 noble lords, is that the extension of the main river valley to the north is extremely empty. Under the impact of the main river, a huge bay was formed on it. The terrain is flat and the soil is good, which is very suitable for large-scale farming. The closer to the main river, the more fertile the land. The long-term accumulation of silt has formed the most suitable plain for farming here. If it were not for the threat of floods, I am afraid that this area would be enough to give birth to several noble lords again. Thor wants to reclaim a large amount of wasteland, and the first thing to do is to solve the water shortage in this area. Thor naturally had an idea for this. The best way is undoubtedly to build a reservoir. That's right, it's a reservoir. In Thor's previous life, reservoirs were generally used as water conservancy projects to intercept floods, store water and regulate water flow, and can be used for irrigation, power generation, flood control and fish farming. It is naturally impossible to use it for power generation in this era, but it is possible to use the reservoir capacity to intercept floods, reduce the peak flow entering the downstream river, and achieve the purpose of reducing flood disasters. At the same time, a certain level of fishery can be carried out to form new economic output. I didn't do it before. That's because the upstream is the territory of Baron Valmy and Baron Graydon, and he is short of manpower. It is naturally not a problem at this moment. So Thor soon arranged thousands of slaves and dozens of knights to lead the team, and at the same time mobilized the forces of Baron Valmy and Baron Graydon's territory to start building reservoirs in the entire upper reaches of the main valley. A large number of people and horses gathered. The grand construction began immediately. In this regard, Baron Valmy and Baron Graydon were somewhat reluctant. But under the constraints of the contract, they could only pinch their noses and accept it. While the reservoir was being built, a large amount of wasteland in the downstream Eagle Ridge was also being opened up. There was still more than half a year before the next flood period. With the power of the extraordinary world, the entire reservoir could be built in half a year at most, and there would be no need for floods, so it could be reclaimed without any worries. And during the reclamation, the first batch of grain was harvested immediately. The composting technology from the previous life obviously played a lot of role in this world. The wheat in the large amount of land reclaimed in the early stage was harvested. A large number of slaves and free people looked at the full wheat on their land excitedly, and their expressions could not help but be excited. Oh my God, this is incredible. 300 pounds, there are actually 300 pounds. The goddess of life bless you. The Lord is so awesome. On the land, the eyes of the slaves and free people who harvested one by one were full of excitement. Because the wheat harvest far exceeded their imagination. In their memory, the output of 1 acre of land was only about 200 pounds even when the harvest was good, but now the output of 1 acre of land has reached 300 pounds, which is nearly doubled, which is simply unbelievable. Many people even feel that they are in a dream. In the castle. 300 pounds. Thor frowned slightly and sighed. He has tried his best to bring some technologies from his previous life, but the world is different after all, and without modern fertilizers, the yield of wheat can never reach the level of the previous life. Not even 1/10. In some areas in the north of the previous life, the yield of wheat per acre can reach about 1,100 catties, while even in the south, it is generally between 800 and 1,000 catties. The acre in this world is much larger than in the previous life, almost doubled, and the pound is about the same as 1 catty in the previous life. In other words, the yield of 1 acre here is only 150 catties now, which can be said to be pitiful. Sir, this is already a very high yield. In Frost Moon Province, our family only has 200 pounds. Sometimes it's even less than 150 pounds. Ryan was still excited, and his eyes were full of respect when he looked at Thor. Okay, go down and make arrangements first, and dry and store the grain as soon as possible. Thor did not continue to struggle, but opened his mouth and gave orders quickly. The harvest at this moment means that he has a large amount of grain in the warehouse, and grain is very precious in the northern province. During this period, he spent the most money not on slaves. Even though slaves cost a lot of gold coins, it was nothing compared to the continuous consumption of food. If this batch of food has not been harvested yet, he will have to consider going to buy food again. Although he has the trade established by Lyosh to provide gold coins. But these gold coins may not be able to sustain. At this moment, with this batch of harvest, there is no need to be so anxious. He can continue to develop slowly. Although the grain output is not satisfactory, he has reclaimed a lot of land before, and he has reclaimed some more later. It can be expected that there will be a steady output in the future. It can barely be self-sufficient. It seems that we still have to find a way to increase the grain output as much as possible. In this world, it seems that elves can do it. Thor muttered to himself, thinking of some information he had obtained from reading books before. Compared with humans, elves are undoubtedly the darlings of heaven and earth, and have the ability to make plants grow rapidly and transform quickly. If he wanted to continue to provide output, it was obviously impossible to rely on some methods in his previous life. After all, the world was different, and this effect was already the limit. If he wanted to continue to improve, he had to rely on the methods of this world. When thinking of the elves, Thor couldn't help but think of the half-elf girl. But he couldn't be sure whether the half-elf girl also had this effect. After all, she was just a half-elf, not an elf. And the other party didn't surrender completely. Chapter 73 The crisis is coming. The yield per acre is only 300 pounds, which he cannot accept in any case. After all, this means that a large number of laborers in his territory will be locked to the land, and it will be an extremely long time for the territory to develop. Process. Thor had no intention of spending hundreds or even thousands of years developing a family. As a result, the land's food production will inevitably need to increase. Thoughts flowed one after another. Thor soon had an idea. Regardless of whether Anna can do it or not, he can definitely give it a try. If it can succeed, it will undoubtedly have huge benefits. Next, the development of his territory will really take off on a high-speed track. Even if it doesn't work out, he doesn't lose anything. But before he could take action, the new information had to dispel his next plans and ideas. He didn't even have time to try again. Stars adorn the sky. The night sky in Changge Ridge looks particularly peaceful. Everything was silent, and Thor opened the daily information system as usual. With the continuous use of the golden finger, Thor has also become accustomed to opening the daily information as soon as possible in the early morning. Today is no exception. Daily information has been updated. 1. 500 miles north of your territory, a group of pig beasts will pass by, and the leader of the pig beasts seems to be about to break through to the third level. 2. In the west of your territory, in the barony of Wales, a serf accidentally discovered that the fern roots and the fire spirit tree were grafted together, which increased the output value of the fire spirit tree. 3. 3 months later, due to a tribal war, a Tauren tribe was defeated, and its Tauren leader led the tribe into the Main River Valley, which had a huge impact on the pioneering lords of the entire Main River Valley. 4. There was a slight conflict between the Rosen family and the Dellen family in Eagle Ridge. 5. In the upper reaches of the Main River Valley on the west side of the Eagle Ridge territory, a group of earth dragons will pass by. A6. A. Lines of text appeared, but the moment they came into view, Thor stood up suddenly. His expression couldn't help but change instantly. Tauren, damn it. Why did the Minotaur appear in the Main River Valley? And why at this time? The voice couldn't help but blurt out. At this moment, Thor couldn't calm down at all. The biggest threats to the Northland province are undoubtedly Warcraft and orcs, among which the orcs are undoubtedly the greater threat. Compared to Warcraft, the orcs already have enough civilization, and they are extremely powerful. Except for goblins, which are relatively easy to deal with, most of the orc tribes are existences that are difficult for the pioneer knights to deal with. No, I shouldn't say it's difficult to cope with it, but it's simply impossible to cope with it. The number of each orc tribe is at least thousands, or even as high as tens of thousands, or even hundreds of thousands. Even top orcs such as Beeman and Titan are ordinary Tauren and werewolves. They are not ordinary pioneer lords, or even ordinary Tauren. The average Baron Lord can handle it. Moreover, in the orc tribe, every orc is no less powerful than a trainee knight, not to mention that the leaders of the orc tribe are at least second level, and maybe even third level existences. Fortunately, it is difficult for ordinary pioneer lords to encounter large-scale orcs. In addition to developing the lord's territory, it is also guarded by the most elite legions in the kingdom. Orcs are hard to get past. This also gave the pioneer lords room to survive. But now, 3 months later, he was facing an orc tribe. Even Thor couldn't help but be a little frightened. His current strength is very strong, but he is not strong enough to deal with an orc tribe, even a defeated orc tribe, it is impossible. Especially just half a month ago, Neil Morton left due to something, which undoubtedly put his Eagle Ridge into crisis. Damn it. Damn it, are all the Flying Eagle Knights just doing nothing? Thor couldn't help but curse secretly, and his face couldn't help but look anxious. After 1 year of construction, the experience and resources he invested in Eagle Ridge were beyond imagination. He had already started here and gave up rashly. He does not know how long it will take to have such a foundation next time, and he may not have it yet. With such a huge advantage, it was obviously impossible for him to give up Eagle Ridge under such circumstances. But the threat of the Tauren is already real. No, we have to find a way. Eagle Ridge can't give up. Thoughts are flowing, thoughts are constantly intertwined, and thoughts arise immediately. Thor was thinking quickly about what to do next. Since it was impossible to give up Eagle Ridge, he had to consider how to deal with it next. The defeated orc tribe, and only the Tauren tribe, although very dangerous, may not have no way to deal with it. The best way is to notify the Flying Eagle Knights. As the most elite knights in the kingdom stationed in the Northland province, they are responsible for cleaning up the orc tribes in the Northland province. But that was 3 months later. At this moment, he didn't know where the Tauren tribe was, and what should he say? Moreover, although the Flying Eagle Knights have the obligation to clean up, it is only an obligation, and the Flying Eagle Knights may not take action. Otherwise, the entire Northland province would not have wiped out so many pioneering lords every year. In addition, we can also see how strong this Minotaur tribe is. Now his strength is not only the forces under his command, but also the Lawrence territory, Valmy territory, and Graydon territory. He is enough to integrate the power of the three families. With the combined power of the three families, if the Minotaur tribe is not too strong, maybe they can really deal with it. At this moment, Thor was a little fortunate that he did not kill them all before. If he had solved the three lords, I am afraid that he would have to give up one choice in this crisis. Now at least there is still hope. After all, the description is only an impact, not destruction, which means that the Minotaur tribe should not be too strong. We can wait and see. I hope there will be more information next. Thor muttered to himself, and he couldn't help but feel a little nervous. The night gradually passed. The morning sun fell. Thor quickly issued an order. At the same time, he sent people to notify Lyosh Assad to explore as much as possible where there are traces of the Minotaur tribe. After doing all this, Thor was still not at ease. Regardless of whether it was useful or not, he still sent several knights to the Eagle Knights base. Although the Eagle Knights were unlikely to take action, what if? In this crisis, even if the probability was 1 in 10,000, Thor would try. Of course, this was just a try, and Thor did not forget that the most important thing was himself. He began to increase the construction of fortifications. At the same time, a large amount of resources began to be consumed, and he tried his best to cultivate the strength of his subordinates. He even began to send personnel to Loren City again to start large-scale procurement, and the large amount of gold coins he had just obtained through trade were once again spent without money. Just kidding, if we can get through this time, these gold coins will naturally not be a problem, but if we can't get through, these gold coins will be useless. Chapter 74. 1 month, the crisis is approaching. A huge amount of gold coins were spent. All the gold coins obtained this time were used for purchasing. Time passed slowly under Thor's arrangement. In a blink of an eye, a month had passed. This month, the entire main valley seemed particularly quiet, without any turmoil. Because Thor had already subdued the three nobles, even the other pioneering lords of the main valley did not dare to have any thoughts about the Eagle territory. And the three nobles did not take any other actions. The contract was established. Once violated, the consequences they had to face were not something they could bear at all. In this world, the law of the goddess of life permeated the entire sky, and all contracts established under the law of the goddess of life could not be violated. It was just that the main valley was relatively calm. Other places were not so calm. Northwest of the main valley. At this moment, the fight was spreading. The huge flames filled the entire territory. Chaos and crying were spreading. This was obviously the territory of a noble lord. However, at this moment, the prosperous territory was full of burning flames and fleeing people. An hour ago, this territory was attacked by the Tauren tribe. Baron Rothchar, the lord, died on the spot, and then the entire territory was broken by the Tauren. In the territory, a large number of people were torn to pieces by the Tauren. Women were captured by the Tauren. If nothing unexpected happens, these women will become the Tauren's reproductive tools in the future. Unlike Warcraft, orcs, elves, and humans do not actually have reproductive isolation. Due to the special nature of orcs, they generally capture human women as reproductive tools. Even orcs will use some secret methods to consume the vitality of human women, so as to continuously give birth to tribesmen. This Tauren tribe failed in the tribal war and had to flee far away. Although they escaped, the tribe suffered heavy losses, and they urgently needed a large number of tribesmen to replenish. This Baron's territory was undoubtedly favored by them. The result was unexpectedly smooth. Bless you, Titan. The leading minotaur spoke, full of ferocity and excitement in the firelight. And in the houses, women's pain and screams were heard. The firelight shone. When the night gradually fell, there was no trace of living people in the entire territory. A huge bonfire rose up, and on the bonfire, roasted yellow human figures appeared one by one, sizzling with oil. Their internal organs were cleaned and piled up randomly on the side, and saliva flowed from the mouths of minotaurs. And in the house, small minotaurs began to walk out. In the room, the women had died miserably. This night was destined to be a carnival for the minotaurs. The news on the second day swept the entire northern province like a whirlwind. All the noble lords in the entire northwest region could not help but feel insecure all of a sudden. Some lords even began to migrate overnight, while some lords began to quickly send letters for help to the Flying Eagle Knights, or simply sent people to go there. However, it was of no avail. The letters sent out were like a stone sinking into the sea. The troops sent out could not even get into the Flying Eagle Knights. Such a result undoubtedly made everyone in the entire northwest region panic. More people began to abandon their territories. Even though these territories were built by them for several years and cost a lot of gold coins, they could not care so much at this moment. After all, if the territory and gold coins were lost, they could still earn them back, or if the people were lost, then everything would be gone. Even this wave of fluctuations spread from the northwest to further away. Lyosh Assad, who was opening up a trade route, quickly got this news. After getting it, even Lyosh was shocked. Not only because of the problem of the Minotaur, but more importantly, Thor had told him to pay attention to this news a month before, and Thor seemed to know it in advance, which made his expression full of shock. And in shock, he did not dare to neglect it. He began to understand quickly. After understanding almost everything, he quickly put down the business in his hand and returned to the Eagle territory. Half a month later, Lyosh Assad returned to the Eagle territory and reported the situation to Thor. Just a second-level Tauren tribe. Thor was a little surprised and looked at Lyosh Assad. There is also a strict level division among the orc tribes, or in other words, humans have given them a strict level division. Generally, the orc tribe with people comparable to the Great Knight is called a second-level tribe, and the tribe with people comparable to the Earth Knight is a third-level tribe. At this moment, the Tauren tribe is only the second level, which surprised him a little. Unlike goblins, the highest level of Tauren can grow to the fourth level, and the second-level Tauren tribe is still very rare. And how could the second-level Tauren tribe pose a huge threat to the main valley and him? With his strength, he might not be able to deal with a third-order orc tribe, but he is very confident that he can deal with a second-order tribe, so theoretically, there will be no crisis. Yes, it's only the second level, but it should be formed by the collapse of a third-level Tauren tribe. Compared with the ordinary second-level orc tribe, it is stronger. It is said that there are 7 or 8 second-level Taurens, including 2 second-level peak Tauren leaders. Lyosh Assad nodded and spoke with caution. I understand. Thor nodded, with a look of understanding. He probably understood the second-level tribe formed by the collapse of the third level. After all, even if it collapsed, it was once a third-level tribe. It was inevitable that it could cause a crisis to the main valley and the Eagle territory. Lyosh, my friend, please keep watching. Thor took a deep breath, and then spoke to Lyosh Assad solemnly. Okay. I will do it. Lyosh Assad nodded, without any hesitation. At this moment, he and Thor have become a community of interests, and he naturally does not want any accidents to happen in the Eagle territory. Lyosh Assad left again soon. Thor began to prepare. The danger was indeed dangerous enough. But as he thought, it was not impossible to deal with. As long as he gathered the power of the main valley, especially the power of the three nobles, and added 5 magic crystal cannons, it would be very likely that he could deal with the attack of the minotaurs this time, but at least he would have a chance to stop it. After all, although there were 7 or 8 second-level minotaurs, and 1 peak second-level minotaurs, the number of great knights of the 4 families alone had reached 4, plus Ryan, whose current strength was very close to that of a great knight, that was 5. Compared with the minotaurs, the high-end combat power was not much different. Although the power of the magic crystal cannon was limited because the magic core was only second level, it could also play a big role. Chapter 75 The family's support has arrived. The information brought back by Lyosh Assad made Thor feel relieved. The situation was not as bad as he imagined, so the idea of AA giving up the territory was completely abandoned by him, and all his thoughts began to fall on the territory under defense. Time also immediately disappeared further. Soon it will be another month, and the Tauren attack described in the intelligence is getting closer and closer. And more news soon came through Lyosh. In less than a month, 2 barons have been established one after another, 7 pioneer lord territories have been destroyed, and the Tauren tribe has further grown. From the beginning, the number of tribes was only 7 or 800, and now the information sent back has arrived. There are more than 3,000, and Ida is still growing. A large number of noble lords throughout the northwest region began to flee. Even in neighboring places, many nobles began to flee. Even where the main river valley is located has been somewhat affected. Fortunately, the distance is still quite far, and everyone is just worried and has not taken any action yet. In the castle, Thor looked at the map in his hand, his face couldn't help but remain silent. Compared to other lords and nobles in the main valley, he was not so optimistic. During this period of time, the constant reminders of intelligence were enough for him to understand that the next target of the group of Tauren was the main river valley. Even if they were still quite far away from each other, they would arrive soon. And based on the current increase in the opponent's number, when they arrive, the number of Tauren may be enough to reach more than 5,000, and may even reach 6 or 7,000. Even though these Tauren are not strong because they were formed using secret techniques, they are not goblins. Ordinary people are still unable to deal with them. At least they need to be prepared as knights, and even as apprentices to be able to do so. More than 5,000 Tauren are enough to be terrifying. Alice, call Ren over here. Looking away from the map, Thor spoke directly to the door. Yes, master. Anna answered quickly at the door and left quickly. After a while, Ren walked in. Grown-ups. Ren spoke respectfully. Take my order and go to the mine to ask Steve to stop the production of the mine. Within 10 days, the magic crystal cannon must be transported to the Eagle territory and all other personnel must also evacuate. Thor spoke and quickly gave the order. Large iron mines are indeed important. Up to now, it can almost steadily bring him about 400 to 500 gold coins every month. But in this situation, if the safety of the Eagle territory is not guaranteed, no matter how much gold coins you have, it will be meaningless. It is better to evacuate the mine first and concentrate all efforts to deal with this crisis. Anyway, now there is no need to worry about who dares to occupy it. Yes. Ren was a little shocked, but he didn't suggest anything and quickly agreed. A day later, Ren arrived at the mine and delivered the news to Steve. After receiving the news, Steve couldn't help but be shocked. Are you sure this is what the adults said? Steve looked at Ren with shock. Sure. My lord told me this personally. Ren nodded, with a solemn look on his face. Good. I know, I'll do it immediately. Steve responded and did not continue to ask. Even though he also had countless questions in his mind, in this case, he also chose to obey unconditionally. Soon, the work in the entire mine started and stopped quickly. 5 days later, all operations in the entire mine have been stopped. A large number of slaves and knights gathered. Even famous goblins were gathered. Under the leadership of Steve, we headed back towards the Eagle leader. Returned to Eagle territory 2 days later. With this power, Thor finally felt more at ease. He began to redeploy, especially the 5 magic crystal cannons. At the same time, he also started arming Steve and other knights. While Thor was busy, the 3rd month is quickly approaching. According to the intelligence, in 10 days at most, the bullhead will attack the territory where the entire main valley is located. Just as Thor was about to contact other lords, an unexpected surprise arrived first. That's right, it's an unexpected surprise. Outside the Eagle territory, a large group of troops is marching towards the Eagle leader in a mighty manner. This troop is exactly the support Count Engeldressrosa gave to his son Terdressrosa. There are not only 5 affairs officers who are proficient in various things, but also 100 craftsmen of various kinds, 10 formal knights, and hundreds of reserve knights. In addition, there is a Great Knight. As the Great Knight, Perlos is naturally the leader of the team this time. For that Master Thor, he was undoubtedly a stranger. Unlike Michael, as members of the Eagle Knights, they actually have very little contact with the descendants of Engeldressrosa. In my memory, I only met Master Thor once or twice. He actually had some resistance to this order. To him, this is tantamount to being given away. After all, he is a high knight, and he is still a high knight in his 30s. There is no doubt that he can get a lot from the Dressrosa family. Both resources and cultivation are unimaginable in other places. But now, he was ordered to follow Master Thor to open up the territory. He could almost imagine the difficulties. However, even if he had resistance in his heart, facing Count Engel, Perros did not dare to have any opinions. But he had no hope for his future. I hope that Master Thor doesn't have those damn problems. Perros sighed. At this moment, he could only look forward to it. Then he ordered the team to speed up again. Now they have been away from Lucerne City for 7 days. If they speed up, they will probably reach the Eagle territory today. Time passed slowly. Soon dusk gradually fell. Here we are. Just in front. Looking at the map in his hand, Perros couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. The journey of nearly 2 months was finally about to arrive. And as he breathed a sigh of relief, the jungle in front of him quickly crossed. The scene in the distance also came into his eyes. The first was a towering castle. Then there were golden wheat fields. Damn it. Wrong way. Perros was stunned for a moment, then couldn't help cursing. At this moment, he naturally wouldn't think that this prosperous territory was the Eagle territory of Terdressrosa. After all, it had only been less than a year since that young Master Thor became the Pioneer Lord, so how could the territory have such a scale? At this moment, the only possibility was that he had taken the wrong way. Subscribe to Chinese Novel Audiobook YouTube channel. Chapter 76 The Turmoil in the Main Valley. Thor never thought that he just asked for some officials, but his father gave him such a big gift. Not only did he ask for officials, but he directly gave him 5. Each of them was the most capable official of his father in his memory. And more importantly, there were hundreds of craftsmen of various types and a great knight. Needless to say, the former, now the most lacking in the construction of Eagle Ridge's various craftsmen, and the latter is even more needless to say. A great knight is the most important force in the entire Northland province. Especially in this situation where the Minotaur is about to attack, one more great knight is enough to give him more confidence to deal with it. Of course, Thor was shocked, and Perros, who led the team this time, was even more shocked. At first, when he saw the scale of Eagle Ridge, Perros just felt that he had gone to the wrong place. It was not until Thor brought his men to greet them and led them into Eagle Ridge that Perros opened his mouth wide and was extremely shocked. This is actually the territory of that Master Thor. But how is this possible? How could Master Thor's territory have developed to this point in less than a year? As one of the captains of the Eagle Knights, Perros knew the situation in the northern province very well. After all, the entire Dressrosa family had many pioneer knights who went to the northern province, not to mention those who became pioneer knights. But in his understanding, even the previous masters took almost 2 years to gain a foothold, and there was even one who had not gained a foothold for 3 years. Even though Master Thor seemed to have received great support from the Earl, this speed was too fast. It was so fast that he felt like a dream. Master Thor. Perros opened his mouth, but he didn't know how to speak halfway through. Perros, you should call me sir. Steve frowned and spoke with dissatisfaction. Sir. My God, forgive my offense, you really shocked me. You know, I just thought those damn brokers took us the wrong way. Perros quickly apologized, bowed to Thor and spoke respectfully. Nothing. Steve, Take Pelos down and make some arrangements, let him get familiar with Eagle Ridge as soon as possible, and the Eagle Knights will be temporarily handed over to Pelos. Thor smiled and nodded, not caring too much. After thinking for a while, he gave the order. Pelos had just arrived, so he naturally couldn't give him too much power, but as a great knight, he couldn't waste it. The reserve knights could just be handed over to Pelos for the time being. Yes. Steve nodded quickly and responded. Sir, I'll take my leave. Pelos couldn't help but thank him quickly with joy. He didn't expect that Thor would hand over a Eagle Knights to him as soon as he arrived. After understanding the entire Eagle Ridge, Peros dared not underestimate the Eagle Ridge. After instructing and arranging Peros, Thor began to arrange various craftsmen. At this moment, the entire Eagle Ridge can be said to be lacking in everything. The arrival of these craftsmen is enough to fill a large part of the vacancy in the entire Eagle Ridge. More importantly, with these craftsmen, plus the food coming up, the entire Eagle Ridge is already enough to achieve a certain degree of self-sufficiency. This is extremely important in the entire Northland province. It is also extremely difficult. In the entire Northland province, there are a large number of pioneering lords and noble lords, but there are indeed not many who can achieve self-sufficiency. If Thor can do it, the benefits he can get are undoubtedly huge. The most eye-catching is the gold coin. You must know that now a large amount of materials need to be purchased in Lucerne City, and each time it is a large expenditure. Not to mention that the corresponding materials can be sold, this in and out has a lot of gold coins. For these, Thor still attaches great importance to them. While Thor was busy, the time described in the intelligence for the Torrent to attack the main valley was getting closer and closer. And the news of the Torrent finally reached the main valley. No, it should not be said that it reached the main valley. A Torrent tribe crossed the defense line and stepped into the northern province. As long as there were some pioneering lords with information channels, they would have known it long ago. But before, most of the pioneering lords in the main valley did not pay too much attention. After all, the information of the Torrent tribe was far away from the main valley, and the main valley was not in the same direction from the defense line. To the north was the Northland Glacier, and the orc tribe rarely reached the main valley. But this time was different. 3 days ago, the Sunset Territory, which was only 100 miles away from the main valley, was attacked by the Torrent tribe. The territories of 3 pioneering lords were destroyed. This was like a heavy bomb hitting the main valley. It made everyone panic. Damn it, how could it be? Those damn orcs usually go to the main valley. Oh my god. What should we do? Should we run away too? This is the territory we have worked so hard to build over the years. The pioneering lords everywhere were in a panic, and hesitation. Even the 3 noble lords could not calm down. Especially Baron Valmy and Baron Graydon. They were closest to the place where the Minotaurs attacked 3 days ago. Once the Minotaurs tribe headed here, they would be the first to bear the brunt. So the moment the news came, the 2 barons gathered together. Damn it, is the goddess of life kidding me? Who can tell me how those dirty Minotaurs came to the main valley? Shouldn't they go south? Are we going to abandon our territory? In the Graydon Castle, Baron Valmy spoke with disbelief. Such news was almost unacceptable to him. More than 10 years. Here, God knows how much he has paid. As a result, it seems that he has to give up now. How can he be willing to do this? Those damn Minotaurs may not be able to arrive here. Baron Graydon also frowned, and after thinking for a moment, he still spoke with hesitation. Even though he said this himself, he was a little unconfident. No, that's probably unlikely. Luoxia is leading us and there are only us around. Those damn orcs can't possibly go to the North Glacier. No one except the Titans survived there. Baron Valmy smiled bitterly and shook his head. His words immediately silenced Baron Graydon. Chapter 77 New Information. The castle fell into silence, and the 2 barons stopped talking, and their faces looked particularly ugly. Until a moment later, Baron Graydon spoke hoarsely. Maybe we still have a chance. That Minotaur tribe is just a loser in the tribal war. It is not strong. It seems that there are no 3rd-level Minotaurs. Not loud. But it is extremely obvious in the entire castle. The words fell, but Baron Valmy stopped him by shaking his head with a wry smile. It's impossible. Even if it's just the defeated ones in the tribal war, we can't handle it. Even if there are no third-level Tauren, there are definitely a lot of second-level Tauren. Baron Valmy's voice came out. He has stayed in the Northland province even longer than Baron Graydon, so he naturally knows how powerful the orc tribe is. As he said, even the defeated orc tribe was not something they could handle. They have big knights, and big knights can generally deal with second-level orcs, but that depends on how many there are. 1 or 2 second-level orcs, or even 3 or 4 can do something about it. But a Tauren tribe cannot only have 3 or 4 second-level orcs. It is possible that it has 7 or 8, or even more, even if it is a defeated orc tribe. But we can't really give up. Baron Graydon sighed and spoke slowly. If you don't give up, you might still have a chance. Baron Valmy seemed to have thought of something and spoke with hesitation. Chance? Baron Graydon asked subconsciously. Yes, if you have a chance. Do you still remember the descendant of Dressrosa we met before? Valmy nodded and then spoke to Baron Graydon. No. What did you say he did? Baron Graydon's face turned dark for a moment. It was the first time that he had suffered such humiliation and was even forced to sign a contract. That one is different from us. It's obvious that he has the support of the Dressrosa family and even possesses a magic crystal cannon. I'm afraid that one doesn't want his territory to fall. Let's unite together, plus the Pioneer Lord may really have a chance to block it. Baron Valmy spoke softly, and his eyes couldn't help but shine as he spoke. This seemed like a real opportunity. And listening to the words spoken by Baron Valmy, Baron Graydon's original dark expression gradually became clear. The figure also began to move back and forth. Baron Valmy didn't bother either. After a while, the magic crystal cannon and the Great Knight are indeed possible. Baron Valmy, that's it. I don't want to give up my territory. Let's go and talk with Baron Pape, and call the other Pioneer Lords by the way. Then we will contact Thor, Your Excellency, to see if he is willing. If he is willing, we will completely obey him in the future. Whatever he wants, we will definitely satisfy him. Baron Graydon stopped. His expression kept changing at this moment. Finally, he made up his mind and spoke directly. Good. Let's go now. Baron Valmy nodded and expressed his position in the same way. After all, compared to the territory, these are obviously nothing. And the two acted quickly. One day later, Baron Graydon and Baron Valmy arrived at Lawrence Castle. At this moment, Papyrus was also in panic. Even though he is much stronger than Baron Valmy and Baron Graydon, he is not capable of dealing with the orc tribe. And giving up the territory is also something he cannot accept. He was facing the arrival of Baron Graydon and Baron Valmy, especially after knowing their intentions. Papyrus couldn't help but his eyes lit up. It was quickly agreed. With the 3 main valley nobles united, other pioneer lords were quickly summoned. After stating the intentions of the 3 nobles, most of the pioneer lords, except for a few, hesitated. Most decided to join forces. Territory is the most important thing for every pioneering lord. After so many years of hard work, no one is willing to give up unless it is absolutely necessary. After settling this, the 3 barons immediately headed to Eagle Ridge. And Eagle Ridge. Thor naturally didn't know at this moment. After he arranged the personnel given by his father, he also began to further prepare supplies. A piece of information from Lyosh Assad came back, and the time was getting closer, making Thor more and more nervous. Especially when the news came back 3 days ago, Thor couldn't help but be shocked. Compared to Baron Valmy and Baron Graydon, he undoubtedly knows more information. After all, during this period of time, Lyosh was running business, and his acquisition of news and intelligence was beyond what others could match. And precisely because he knew this, Thor was even more frightened. Because at this moment, the number of the Tauren tribe has not only increased rapidly, but the number of second-level Taurens has also reached 10, and there are even 3 peak second-level Taurens. Such a powerful force is simply impossible to cope with. Now, even with Pelos, the number of Great Knights in the entire main valley is only 5. With the magic crystal cannon, it may be able to stop 10 second-level minotaurs, but it is definitely impossible to deal with 13 second-level peak minotaurs. After all, he only has a second-level magic core, and the number is not too many. Damn it, are you really going to run away? Thor muttered to himself, and his face became a little ugly after being frightened. The situation seems to be worse than he imagined. The so-called impact may even lead to devastation. While Thor frowned, time also came to the early morning. Ding! The intelligence system has been updated. Open it. The mechanical voice sounded, as usual. Open it. Thor suppressed the anxiety in his heart and spoke subconsciously. And as his words fell. Buzz. Daily intelligence updated. 1. 500 miles north of your territory, a group of pigs will pass by. 2. In the western part of your territory, in the territory of barren whales, a serf unexpectedly discovered. 3. 7 days later, because of the defeat of a Tauran tribe in a tribal war, its Tauran leader led the tribe into the main valley, which had a huge impact on the pioneering lords in the entire main valley. 4. The Rosen family and the Dellin family in Eagle Ridge had a slight conflict. 5. 6. Located in the north of the main valley, 30 miles south of the Grand Canyon of the Northland Glacier, a natural elf will be born in 5 days. 7. Chapter 78 Natural Spirits. List after list appeared. As usual, Thor scanned them one by one. He was still thinking about how to deal with this crisis. But just as his thoughts were flowing, the next moment, the content of the intelligence made his pupils shrink violently. Natural elves. He muttered to himself, with surprise in his eyes. And there was also disbelief. Elves. In this world, it is undoubtedly the synonym of nobility. Every elf is undoubtedly a natural sharpshooter and mage. Just like Anna, although she is only a half-elf, her mage talent is extremely high. Thor never thought that there was an elf about to be born not far from his territory, and it was not an ordinary forest elf, but a rare natural elf. During the time he left Dressrosa Castle, he read a lot of books. He already had a lot of knowledge about the whole world. The same is true for elves. In the records of the classics, elves, there are also differences. Without considering the special existence of half-elves, the biggest difference is the difference between forest elves and natural elves. Forest elves are generally born from the Tree of Life. They are bred by the fruits of the Tree of Life. They have a relatively strong magical talent at birth and have a natural affinity for plants. If Alan's affinity for all things covers all creatures, then the forest elves have a full affinity for plants. From the perspective of plants alone, forest elves are stronger. Natural elves are different from forest elves. Although they are both elves, they are not strictly considered to be the same existence. Natural elves are the embodiment of elements. Each of them is born with the favor of the goddess of life, has the power to control elements, and naturally has a very strong affinity for elements. If forest elves have a strong magical talent, then natural elves are magic itself. Moreover, natural elves can sign a symbiotic contract with forest elves, allowing each other to grow rapidly. Natural elves are initially fragile, while forest elves are relatively strong, and they are blessed by the mother tree of life, which can give natural elves a certain growth space. If a forest elf obtains a contract with a natural elf, it can improve its own talent and potential and grow into a more powerful elf. Looking at this information, thinking about his half-elf maid, Thor's expression could not help but be a little strange. There is no tree of life here, nor other elves. No matter how you look at this information, it seems to be a chance for the half-elf girl. Maybe if he hadn't bought Anna, she would probably have been bought by the lord of the northern province, and then contracted with a natural elf by chance. And as long as she can contract with a natural elf, the higher-level symbiotic contract will completely cover the lower-level slave contract, allowing Anna to break free from the restrictions of slavery. It's really the favor of the goddess of life. Whispering, Thor couldn't help shaking his head. Having lived 2 lives, in the era of various information explosions in the previous life, Thor understood more than people in this era that there have always been people favored by God in this world. Ryan is like this, and so is Anna. There will even be more people besides them. It's just that they are not noticeable in the huge crowd. This is not surprising. His thoughts flowed, and he was ready to continue thinking about the next matter. But soon, his movements could not help but pause. His eyes could not help but look at the information again. Maybe I can try, he murmured to himself, and then the thought in his mind could no longer be suppressed. One thought after another flashed by. The night gradually passed. Early morning. The morning sun shone. A new day came again. The entire Eagle Ridge was once again busy. In the room of the castle. The door was knocked gently. Come in. A gentle voice sounded. Creaky. The door made a slight sound, and Anna walked in with a piece of fruit. Master, your fruit. Anna spoke carefully. Thank you, put it here. Also, Alice, wait a minute. Thor nodded, and didn't care too much. Anna carefully placed the fruit next to her, with a puzzled look on her face, but she still stopped carefully next to her. Thor finished the things in his hands, waved his hand to let the servants around him retreat, and then looked at the girl. He didn't speak. The whole room suddenly became quiet. Anna's heart began to beat. Master, master. With careful words, Anna could feel her heart beating violently at this moment. And the moment he finished speaking, Thor's chuckle sounded. Alice, should I call you Anna, or Anna Karenina? Your Excellency, the half-elf girl from the natural forest. The words were accompanied by a faint smile. However, it was like thunder that suddenly resounded. You. Anna suddenly raised her head and looked at Thor with disbelief in her pupils. At this moment, there was even a panic on her delicate face, but she quickly suppressed it. Master, what are you talking about? Anna's voice was trembling. No, her body was trembling. She knew what the elves would become in the hands of human nobles. The reason why she chose to stay and did not try to escape was that she seemed not to be exposed here and was extremely safe. But now it seems that it is not the case. What? Karenina, one of the three major Duke families in the kingdom, it is rumored that the second son of Duke Karenina brought back a beautiful elf from the natural forest in the early years. Do I need to say more? Thor smiled. Just kidding, he has not done any homework during this period. With the resounding name of Karenina and the elves, it is not too easy to find out something. In fact, he knew it from the beginning. He just didn't say it. You. Anna's eyes were filled with fear. But in the next moment, Thor just threw his hand and an object flew over. Anna was startled, and a wall of fire suddenly rose in front of her, and her figure was about to retreat. But then, her body couldn't help but stop. Puff! The black shadow hit the fire wall directly, and the flames burned. The black shadow was instantly covered. And at the moment of covering, the light intertwined on her body, and the shackles in the dark dissipated at this moment. At this moment, Anna paused. The exquisite face was full of astonishment. Looking blankly at the burning black shadow, the whole person seemed a little stunned, not knowing how to react, and not knowing what to do. Originally, he wanted to escape. Even if there was a slave contract. The worst-case scenario is death. But at this moment, he was completely frozen. Chapter 79 The Half-Elf Girl's Surrender. Nice fire wall. You can actually cast first-level magic instantly. Amidst the silence and Anna's cuteness, Thor smacked his lips and spoke with emotion. You. Anna still had a daze on her face. She wanted to speak but didn't know how. You have done well in the past few months. The slave contract will be lifted. After all, many of the serfs have been lifted. It's impossible to just restrict you. As for who you are, I don't care. Whether you are an elf or a descendant of the Karenina family, you only have one identity here, that is, I am a subject of Dressrosa. By the way, I only lifted your slave status, but I didn't allow you to leave. You still have to work for me for a few years, otherwise I will lose money. Get ready, I'm going out later, you can come with me. Thor chuckled and spoke. He didn't care too much about it. The appearance of the natural elves gave him an opportunity. An opportunity to maximize benefits. In this case, he certainly didn't mind pulling a favor in advance. During this period of time, she also got to know the elf girl in front of her. Although she suffered a lot of hardships, she was still very kind and simple. Such things were enough to make the other party grateful. In addition, if the next action is taken, it might be enough to make the other party completely surrender in his heart. Okay, master. I will work hard. Anna's eyes were filled with tears. Her experience in the Karenina family and her experience during the escape made her full of vigilance and caution against everyone. The Eagle territory made her peaceful and nervous. At first, she wanted to escape, but the peaceful environment of the Eagle territory later made her reluctant to leave. Even if she had to use magic again and again to cover up her half-elf characteristics, she still chose to stay. Today's sudden exposure made her extremely panicked and frightened. However, the result was beyond her expectations. Thor not only did not do anything to her, but even cancelled her slave contract, which touched her. Master, that. Tears appeared in her eyes, and Anna subconsciously wanted to speak again. But she was interrupted by Thor. Okay, go get ready. There will be a surprise later, it depends on whether you can grasp it. Waved his hand and spoke. Okay. Anna was a little confused, but nodded and finally left. She couldn't help but put on a smile when she left. At this moment, the uneasiness in her heart seemed to disappear. She felt inexplicably at ease. In her mind, Thor's appearance seemed to be getting clearer and clearer. The girl walked into the room happily. After a while. Outside the castle. Thor has summoned many knights. This time he didn't bring Ryan, but called 10 formal knights. This power is enough. Master. Anna appeared, her little face was a little red, and her words were very small. Can you ride a horse? Thor looked at Anna and asked. This time, just in case, he also brought the second-level peak unicorn with him. Compared with before, the second-level peak unicorn's aura was stronger and stronger, and it was obviously closer to a breakthrough. In addition, the other dozen formal knights also rode first-level peak unicorns. Listening to Thor's words, Anna shook her head. Although she was a descendant of the Karenina family, she really couldn't ride a horse. At that time, no one in the family knew of her existence, let alone training her. When she shook her head, Thor lifted the girl up to the unicorn in an instant. Ah! A cry of surprise, followed by the man's aura instantly rushed to her face. The girl became more and more flustered. Master. Anna spoke subconsciously. Hold on. Let's go. Thor didn't care. As soon as he spoke, he pulled the reins with one hand. Everyone set off directly. The unicorn was galloping, and the girl's heart was once again filled with ripples as she felt the bumps under her body and the hot breath of Thor. Then she gradually smiled. For some reason, leaning on Thor made her feel inexplicably at ease. The anxiety she had been feeling all along disappeared a lot. The tension in her body gradually relaxed. The morning sun was shining. The group quickly headed towards their destination. The place described in the intelligence was not close. It was located in the north of the main river valley, 30 miles south of the Grand Canyon of the Northland Glacier, and about 200 miles away from the Eagle territory. Even if there was a unicorn at the peak of the first level, it would take almost 2 days to reach the destination. Fortunately, there was still some time before the birth of the natural elves described in the intelligence. There was no need to rush at this moment. The night passed. Time slowly came to the next day. In the early morning of the next day. At this moment in the Eagle territory, Baron Graydon, Baron Valmy, and Baron Pape arrived. Sir Thor is not here. Hearing Ryan's words, the three of them were stunned, and then anxiety appeared on their faces. Knight Ryan, do you know where Lord Thor went? There is really a disaster in the main valley. Yes, Knight Ryan, please find Lord Thor quickly. Knight Ryan. The three of them spoke quickly, and their expressions became more panicked. The original slightly stable moment disappeared at once. Even if they joined forces with other pioneering lords at this moment, they could not stop it with their own strength. And in their anxiety, a figure came over. Barons, don't worry. The Lord has already ordered. Here, take a look at the lords. Pelos spoke, and his words instantly attracted the attention of the three people. At the moment when their eyes converged, the pupils of the three barons couldn't help but shrink, and their hearts couldn't help but tremble. Because at this moment, Peros was actually a great knight like them. And if their memory is correct, they had seen a great knight named Steve in the Eagle territory before. This undoubtedly means that the Eagle territory has not only one great knight, but may even have more than two. After being shocked, the three looked at each other and couldn't help showing a hint of joy. If it were normal times, this would undoubtedly be a matter of concern for them, but at this moment, the stronger the Eagle territory is, the greater the benefits it will undoubtedly have. Sir, what is this? Baron Pape spoke with hesitation, subconsciously looking at the parchment in Peros's hand. Three barons, you will understand after taking a look. Peros didn't say much, but gestured again. The three looked at each other, and finally Baron Pape took it. Soon the words on it came into view. And when he looked at these words, Baron Pape couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. Then he smiled and handed the parchment to others. When they finished reading, the other two couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. After all the hard-pressed New Year greetings, the outbreak should be next week. Chapter 80 The Birth of Natural Spirits. 200 miles north of Eagle Ridge. This is already where the Northland Glacier is located. The Northland Glacier is said to be the place where the frost giants fell in the mythical age. Compared to the northern province, it is much colder here and is covered in ice and snow all year round. Except for a few special plants and life here, it is almost unsuitable for any race to survive. Even if it is just at the southernmost tip of the Northland Glacier, the feeling of severe cold makes the Typhonium exhale a breath of heat, and Thor even feels a warm feeling. The biting cold in my thighs suppressed even my life force. Buzz. Ripples spread, a magic circle rose up on Anna's body, and then a soft feeling enveloped Thor. Thanks. Thor spoke softly. He naturally knew that this was Anna's intention. You're welcome. Anna spoke softly. Thor smiled and then continued to move forward with his troops. It wasn't until dusk came that everyone arrived at their destination. This is a canyon. Glaciers cover the entire surrounding area. There were sparse snowflakes falling in the sky. Thor began to order several knights to start setting up camp. After more than 2 hours, everyone settled down. Next, please pay attention, and report any abnormalities immediately. Thor opened his mouth and immediately gave instructions to everyone. Although the intelligence gave him relatively complete information, it was only relatively complete and not specific. The only location he knew was this canyon. However, the birth of natural elves will inevitably cause violent fluctuations in the elements, which will naturally be noticed when the time comes. Yes. Yes. One after another figures responded. Then everyone started to wait. Time also passed quickly. Time did not allow Told to wait any longer. The next day, the entire canyon had obviously changed. The first thing I felt was the temperature. The temperature of the entire surrounding area suddenly dropped. Then the scattered snowflakes began to expand rapidly. Gradually in the canyon, it was almost impossible to see clearly. The extreme cold made every official knight have to use his life force, and Anna had to put 2 layers of fire magic on herself and Thor. On the third day, the wind and snow increased further. The temperature also dropped further. The fire magic on Anna and Thor has been added to the 5th level. But even so, it was all vaguely unstoppable. Because the cold air was too strong. Of course, at this moment, Anna finally realized what was going to happen. Her beautiful eyes were shining with excitement. My heart was ups and downs violently. Looking at Thor, his lips pursed involuntarily. At this moment, an idea inevitably popped up in her mind. Let's go. It should be right in the middle of the canyon. Thor spoke softly, and then led everyone to stare at feng shui as he advanced. Okay. Anna subconsciously responded quickly, and her figure began to move forward with Thor. It is undoubtedly extremely difficult to move forward against the huge wind and snow. The layers of fire magic light shields began to sway unsteadily. Just less than 20 meters. Crack. There was a clear sound of shattering, and then the outermost magic light shield shattered directly. At the same time, the ice began to spread a new layer of magical light. This time, it was only less than 10 meters. Another layer of magic light shield shattered. Buzz. A ripple spread, and Anna was about to rise with the chanting words in her mouth. However, Thor shook his head and signaled to stop. At the same time, Thor's footsteps also stopped. And now in front. The boundless wind and snow turned into whirlpools, and the entire world became a world of ice and snow. Anna looked at this scene and could no longer contain her excitement. If she wasn't sure before, she was sure at this moment that this was definitely the scene when the natural elf was born. Nature spirit. That's a natural spirit. The role of elves is unimaginable. Owner. In the wind and snow, only the lips can be seen moving. Anna was a little anxious, a little uneasy, and even more expectant. There was a slight change in her eyes when she looked at Thor. Go. Thor spoke softly, signaled to Anna, and stopped taking action. Anna took a deep breath, suppressed the excitement in her heart, and bowed slightly towards Thor. She cast the magic that had been prepared in her hand. A warm feeling came again, further dispelling the cold, and then she took another step. Head forward. The light shield on her body also began to sway. Soon the third magic light shield was also shattered. But the girl's movements still didn't stop. The figure is still moving forward, with excitement, and expectation. In the center of the canyon, countless storms gathered. A small and transparent figure gradually appeared in the wind and snow. Time passes slowly. Looking at this scene, Thor couldn't help but feel nervous. Nature elves are different from forest elves. As the darlings of the goddess of life, they cannot be contracted or subdued. The only contracts that can be concluded are symbiotic contracts that they actively enter into with the forest elves. He couldn't capture or use her at all. So he might as well invest in Anna directly. This investment requires this natural elf to contract Anna. After all, Anna is not a pure forest elf. Even if he has his guess, no one can be sure of the result. Once the natural elf does not contract Anna, then his investment will naturally fail. This made Thor nervous. But at this moment, this is all he can do. Time passed slowly. Anna's figure was getting farther and farther away. Gradually, it was completely covered by the wind and snow. And the wind and snow around were getting bigger and bigger. The coldness was getting stronger. The surrounding nights, the majestic life force around them began to surge out. Even the 3 magic shields on Thor's body could not be maintained. A moment later, crack, another shattering sound arose, and the 3rd magic shield shattered again. At the same time, Han Bing spread the 4th magic shield by nearly 1/3 in just a blink of an eye. At the current speed, the 4th magic shield will also be broken in 10 breaths at most. Once the 4th magic shield is broken, he must consider giving up. With the current coldness, he is just an apprentice knight and his life force is simply impossible to resist. Exposed to this terrifying wind and snow, his body will be completely frozen. Time continues to pass. The wind and snow in front are still there. Crack. After 10 breaths, the 4th magic shield is also broken, and the coldness even penetrates the 5th and 6th magic shields and spreads towards his body. Even with 2 magic shields, it can only support 30 breaths at most, or even shorter. Thank you for watching. Continue exploring the fascinating world of Chinese novels with us. Hit that subscribe button on Chinese Novel Audiobook to stay updated with our latest stories, and never miss out on a great listen.